This is Valve's PS3 moment. They had a lot of hubris, and it's the same thing going down. I think maybe it's gone to Gabe's head. He's forgotten that the reason we used Steam was because it was cheaper. Welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, and today's lead sponsors are Minis Forum with the N5 Max that you can get $30 off through using Broken Silicon through the link below, CDkeyoffer.com, where you can get Windows 11 Professional for just $24, and then the Cash App, download it for free today. And today I'm joined by somebody that I don't know how long. It's hard. Time has become a flat circle for me in my 30s, but I would say probably for the last 6 months to a year, I just randomly be one of those people in the comments that's like, hey, you should have Mysticon. And then eventually, I just said, ask if he'd come on. There was a yes, and we found time to record. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are, what you do? And I like to ask this, like, what got you into doing YouTube?
I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, I mean, I think you are aware, but we have mutual viewers that have sort of gotten us back and forth to connect on this. And I've sourced plenty of your conversations prior, because sometimes you've had a handful of hardware leaks that were very much relevant to what I do, which is covering PlayStation news. So I've been on the platform now for 14, 15 something years. Professionally for the last going on 6, and it's just that, covering PlayStation news primarily. Very analogous to Colin Moriarty. He got to start in the more traditional game space, at IGN, then going independent with Kind of Funny, then doing his own thing. My sort of journey there is just being independent immediately in 2012. So it's a very similar thing.
So you mentioned Colin. He's talked about how technically he has a PlayStation podcast, but in reality, I think actually maybe the majority, if not the plurality of the podcast, they're not talking about PlayStation. There's the usual banter between guys, but then plenty of talk about the macro levels of the gaming industry, Xbox, PC gaming to a degree. Like they're not like PlayStation fanboys. They just kind of put PlayStation as the lead so that they limit how much they have to know, which I myself know is a big issue. Like someone will ask me, what do you think Intel's next gen Xeon server? I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, just didn't pay attention this month. But is that the same for you? Is it like, did you make a concerted, it has to just be PlayStation, or did that just so happen to be mostly how you game? And you're like, let's just keep it to PlayStation news for the most part to limit the scope of what I have to cover. Yeah,
it's interesting. So like the backstory of why it's only PlayStation is because it was distinctly this conscious choice over 10 years ago of it's only PlayStation, because growing up, I thought, what am I going to do with my life? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I was a big IGN reader. IGN, GameSpot, Game Informer. A lot of those places, they kind of had a command and divide kind of way to approach games media, and that their editorial staff, in particular with IGN, they would be, there's a PlayStation team. There's a Nintendo team. And you'd have these guys that are assigned to platforms specifically. So the basis of the channel was simply that of this is the platform I play the most on, and therefore I can cover primarily that. And it's funny nowadays, I think that's paid off quite well. But, as the internet grows and more people are on it, you get tighter niches downward of very specific specialties. So somebody that covers the broader gaming space is going to be not nearly as in the know about something so fine-tuned for a PlayStation, Nintendo, if that's all they do and that's all they talk about. Mm-hmm. So that's played up to my strength, I think, over time, because it is such a particular part of the business. But that's why I chose it back then,
Yeah, and so I have to ask, I assume you do play on other consoles or PC sometimes, right? It's not like you just play on PlayStation, or is it just PlayStation?
No, that's the thing I've always tried to make it clear is games first, platform second. Because I don't think you ever want to come off as just, some sort of can we swear here? But some sort of
absolutely.
Some sort of jackass that's, nobody likes that stuff, right? That kind of behavior. So I always try to make it clear it's games first, platform second. So already like I'm a big physical media guy. You know, you got a wall of red there. That's my Switch stuff. Got some white there. That's my Wii stuff, GameCube. Got a little bit of green for Xbox. And I primarily nowadays use a Mac. So PC stuff is basically non-existent for me. When I had a Windows machine, I would play a little bit here and there. But I think it's very similar for you and me. Like if you have the time, you'll play games, right? So I think if I have time, like it's primarily PlayStation, but God forbid if I have time to pick up my Switch 2 or Series X, I'll do it, you know?
Yeah, I wonder how you feel about this too. Was there any point where you were concerned? Because if I checked out your YouTube channel again right before we recorded just to refresh myself, and from what I could see, you kind of started doing like news coverage right before the PS4. And I suppose that was one heck of a time to start betting on PlayStation, because late PS3 later, I mean, look, there's big mistakes like Concord and yada, 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 yada. But pretty much that's when the momentum just took off, right? And so it seems like PlayStation for now is a safe bet. But was there any concern, or is there any concern? Because I've seen this with other channels where like we're going to be an Xbox channel. I'm just being honest with everyone here. I think that's tanked views of a few channels to a degree. Not if they're good at it, you know, because there's still a rabid fan base there. I've still seen some do very well. But if it's especially the more lighthearted coverage of Xbox news, that's something I know some YouTubers are concerned about when they see. I mean, I think there were rumors just a week ago. They're still not sure how long they will support Xbox. Is that something you worry about with PlayStation, or do you have no worries at all that you'd be able to pivot into just something else, or that PlayStation will just never go away, which is probably a fair bet, but still?
Yeah, it's like, I think all those years ago, that was not even remotely in my thought process. So to your point, yeah, I started during late PlayStation 3, and some of my earliest uploads were PlayStation Vita. Mm-hmm. So if I was betting on the horse on the basis of the platform health, I was picking the two worst PlayStations possible. So that was not, and I say worst as in like sales performance.
Yeah.
Love my Vita dearly, love PlayStation 3 dearly. I digress. That wasn't a choice back then. I think now it gets definitely more into that minutia of just social media and how you can make that a business, generally speaking. So, I mean, sure, like I think it paid off well that PlayStation leads as well as it does. So I'm sure there is a certain concern of, if PlayStation goes away, what the hell can I do? I would think over time, I would hope I've built an audience and, you know, a certain level of notoriety in the games media space to where maybe I still have a platform or a space to talk about stuff that's not PlayStation. That's for the audience to decide. I can't really make that call right now, but for the time being, I'll keep covering PlayStation for as long as it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I remember myself being a little concerned because I was all about like Zen processors and Intel processors and then graphics cards at the beginning of my channel. This was 8 years ago. I mean, it's getting there, how long I've been doing this. And then, you know, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X were about to come out. And I was like, actually, I really enjoy all gaming hardware. So I'm going to micromanage and look at every little detail of these consoles as well. And there's some concern of mine, like, are all the people that just want to know the next, 6 gigahertz, maybe soon 7 gigahertz processors from these companies, are they going to be interested at all in the console side? And the answer is yes. I mean, if you can talk enthusiastically, I think, about one thing, you can talk about another. And I think it's funny that you say you didn't choose. I didn't choose what I talk about either. I've randomly done videos about just the most random subjects. And I think I've found it really is the enthusiasm that carries channels, in my opinion. And people can tell, even if they don't say it, when a subject you're talking about, you actually don't care. And I think that maybe that hurts like a lot of mainstream news too, is they don't care.
100%. I mean, I think it's primarily personality driven. I think like the information can carry it like reasonably far, but if you're not likable, you're not likable. Mm-hmm. And people will turn away to even good information if they don't like you. So I think that's a really big part of it. Is simply you have to be liked, you have to be presentable, and you have to at least even present information that people don't like in a way that's still like, oh, I don't agree with him, but I respect him.
That's hard to do sometimes, I gotta say.
It's really hard to do, but that just comes with the territory.
All right. So one of the first questions I wanted to ask you, seeing how long you've been doing this, is Because I really do think that there's a significant amount of people, and it's fine. I mean, people are born young, and then they're younger than me, and then they come into the world and see things differently than I did. But that there's, at this point, I've been doing this long enough that I'm starting to notice a notable amount of people, like when I mentioned the HD 7970 or Core from PS3. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. Like the deep cuts from before, and I tried to pull out one that I knew you probably remember. Like, yeah. But like, so there's a lot of things going on now where like, especially when I see like the memory crisis, which I've gone through several, lived through several, I should say. Like a lot of the things we see now, I just noticed people are like, oh, this has never been this bad, or this has never been this good. It's like, guys, actually in like 2000, whatever, this exact thing happened and we were fine, or the other way around. So I'm just wondering, like, I'm sure you must notice that sort of stuff too. And like from like the past 20 years, from 2006 to now, what do you think has like changed the most when it comes to gaming?
I mean, I think undeniably it's forever games. It's black hole games. It's completely transformed the model. I mean, it's such a hot topic. I know it's beating that dead horse, but it cannot be understated how different the model is nowadays. So like the metric I always say to people is like, look, SI tells us this every fiscal year. The last 3 or 4 fiscal years, half the revenue from the PlayStation Store is like 10 something live service games.
Yeah.
It's, it's Fortnite, it's Roblox, it's games that don't end. And they're like culturally ingrained in people now. So there is a generation of people that are coming in and they grew up on those games. And I think it's fair to say for somebody like you and me, we grew up in a time where you play a game, you finish it, you move on to the next one. And also it's the sheer volume of stuff that comes out. And we can discredit the thousands of stuff that gets published on Steam because obviously a vast majority of it's probably just not good.
Yeah, but I saw Sony's cracking down on shovelware on PlayStation lately too, finally, by the way.
Well, you can even discredit that. Like, it's just even like quality stuff. There's just so many games that come out. It's so easy to overlook things. So it's just, there's so much like saturation in this competition for your time and dollar in a time where people don't have it. And if you do have it, especially if you're younger and you don't have any money, you're gravitating towards, a Roblox, a Minecraft, or a Fortnite. And then the model is so different. We used to be able to go to a store, look at the shelf, because it was a retail thing. 99% of the time. And you could look at that shelf and that was a bird's eye view of everything that came out and probably was out for the last like 2 years.
I don't know if you remember this, but like on IGN, they used to like list the games that came out that week on Xbox, all of them. And like, I think Sacred Symbols even did that for a while until it got to, and then they just like made Chris Reagan try to read all the Asian names that he is horrible at pronouncing. And it gets to a point where like there was an hour of the show was like, guys, it's time to stop. It's, and for anyone listening who's, probably, I guess I would say below the age of 20, there was a time where parts of podcasts, they would read every game that came out that week. And it would be maybe 12 things. That's it. Maybe
I'd say it was less.
5. Yeah.
I would say, I used to listen to Podcast Beyond. So that was the IGN PlayStation team. That's something Colin was on for a long time. And they would do that. They'd read today's releases. It'd be like 3, 4 games. They'd start including like PSN stuff. It'd be like under a dozen, easy.
I guess you're right. I mean, that really is the thing that's changed the most. And I mean, I remember playing like Mercenaries for like the 4th time when I was younger, honestly, probably 10th time, or beating Final Fantasy X for the 10th time. And like, I would just have like rotating. I get like 2 new games a year or something. And then I like rotate through. Eventually it's 8 games, 10 games, and then if there was actually a huge release, honestly, I wouldn't, because of the internet really wasn't a thing until, if we're being honest, like 2010, I wouldn't always know when the newest big game came out either. That's really, and it makes sense. I mean, if at the time I could have just gotten Minecraft and played that most days, it makes sense why that would happen. But I wonder what you think about this, because I think people, like you brought up the live service thing with Sony and how much of a mistake they made with Concord and really a bunch of studios. I mean, for me, one of the biggest mistakes was what happened with Naughty Dog. I can't believe they didn't release The Last of Us, No Return, whatever it was going to be called, Factions. I don't, like you asked me, I don't care. They worked on that for like 5 or 6 years. Even if they just cut it down into a $40 game, it's insane to me that didn't come out. But I think a lot of times people learn the wrong lessons from mistakes. Like, I think a lot of people are like, see, live service games don't work. No, it's not that they don't work. It's that Sony was really bad at making them. Would you agree with that, or wonder what your thoughts are on that?
My thoughts are complicated on it because I think what ended up happening was it's such a competitive space. And this is a company that is so good at single player games. Like they defined their identity around these tentpole releases, which is what they call them, these AAA cinematic single player games. And they're really good, they're really high quality, and they're really polished. And the company really cares about Metacritic scores and critical reception and rewards, or awards rather. And they're really good at that, right? That doesn't translate to live service. Like PlayStation's had a presence in multiplayer games. Like their first party studios did boxed multiplayer all day, every day on PlayStation 3. You know, from your Warhawk Resistance to then Uncharted having it, Last of Us Factions 1.0.
I think Uncharted 2 and 3 actually had millions of people playing that online. That actually went, though that was actually quite successful.
Yeah. So the thing is, like they're not strangers to it, but I think today's climate is that live service games are a substantial undertaking. And this gets into the whole Bungie thing, right? Like everyone thinks, and we all agree probably, that the Bungie acquisition was bad. Now that's hindsight. The thing that made sense about acquiring them at the time is that they had institutional knowledge on what it takes to operate and run a live service game, which is a staff in the, over 1,000 at the time. That's part of it. Like I think they had a rude awakening of, yeah, we want to release 12 of these by fiscal year 26, which was the initial claim, right? And we know that's sort of behind us. And in the wake of it is all these canceled games, and it looks like shit and it's terrible. So what I always say is that was the best worst case scenario, because you don't want them releasing 12 games that fail. You don't want 12 Concords. Yeah. Concord was that like big impetus. I think that was that big thing of like, oh shit, we really learned that on paper, Concord is polished. Like it's a polished looking, it's like, it's playable. It works. It's, I think anybody that played it would call it a competent game. Right. But it's just like, you can't do the whole single player polished AAA thing for a live service game and think it's going to land. They found out, oh shit, like, no, it has to really, like, the gameplay loop has to be tight. The characters have to be likable. They were going against the grain of like the free to play model. They wanted people to pay for Concord. That worked for Helldivers, but that's not going to work for everything.
Helldivers is a little different too, because it's single player ish, even though it is a co-op game.
And the thing is, they didn't expect Helldivers 2 to do what it did. So it's like you can't throw expertise at it because they actually didn't have any. That's why they bought Bungie. I think Jim Ryan even mentioned, like, we just don't have that knowledge. There's just no other way to get it outside of like bringing it in. Our publishing partners aren't going to hold our hands and tell us how to do it. So they had to bring people in and learn how it was done. Now they brought one in and realized, oh, these guys are kind of ran like shit. They've got their own mess of issues. And so we all know how it panned out, right? The thing I always come back to is the way games are made. Like it's called the Cerny method. It's been a thing for 20 something years, which is you spend as minimal amount of time as possible to realize a game doesn't work, and you cancel it. So when people say, oh, look at PlayStation's like awful live service output, I'm like, okay, but I'm glad they didn't make them. Cancel them. Move on. It's not working out with Blue Point. That was awful, but move on. Now it sucks that they closed them. Yeah. But same with Bend. Same with that the Lucid Games, then that got moved over to Firesprite, a Twisted Metal project. Wasn't okay, cancel it, move on. Naughty Dog spent how? Okay, cancel it, move on. It sucks. It blows ass, but like that's how it works. They got to cancel them quicker. They got to iterate faster, and that's what it is.
Yeah, one thing that I also find myself thinking is if this was happening, I don't know, during like the early Wii era, or I guess early 360 era, and if 360 didn't have the Red Ring of Death, like if their competition was looking ultra competent, then I would go, yeah, I don't know, Sony's really fucking up right now. But when I look around at this landscape, I go, isn't everyone really struggling? I mean, didn't they just kill the Hellblade devs? I mean, that's crazy. That was like the game they showed off over and over and over with the Series X reveal, and that's gone. And then they launched Halo Infinite. It got good reviews, no DLC for some reason. Like I was told by someone in the industry that they had like literally one guy on the DLC team for some reason. And so like, yep, that's why you got Samurai Armor, and that's the only thing you got that month. It's just like Jim in a cubicle working on all DLC for Halo Infinite for some reason. So a lot of times when I think when I look at these failures at Sony is that it just to me seems like an industry-wide issue, and not everyone's having the same problems, but everyone's having pretty massive problems right now, wouldn't you think?
Yeah. Well, because everyone's chasing it. Mm-hmm. And there's not enough time or dollars. So only the very best make it, and it's hard to pull people away from the established ones. How in the world do you pull people off of like something they've already been playing for 5 to 7 years? Fortnite's been around long enough. Now you've got like very matured accounts. People are invested. Same with Roblox. I mean, things ebb and flow, you know. So I like we've already seen that like Fortnite engagement is actually going a little bit down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did.
But also like when games take that long to make, how in the world does anybody know what's going to work in 2035 if something gets greenlit today? Mm-hmm. You're greenlighting today on the basis of what works today, and that's not going to work. And yeah, that was Concord's issue. A big part of like if Concord came out in like let's say 2014, like sure. first year of PlayStation 4, I'll be damned if that game might not have found an audience.
Yeah,
what was there? Warframe and World of Tanks, or you know what I mean? Like
yeah, which wouldn't have been the exact same thing anyway. So so I wonder what you think about this though, because two things I would say to that. Number one, this is why they keep saying it. They like that they want to reduce how long it takes to make a game, but they need to achieve it, because that's such a good point you're making. Like this cannot continue the trend we're seeing where used to take 2 years to make a game, then 3 years, then 4, then now I don't know what you would say. It's 4 to 8 years or something. If that continues and it becomes a decade to make a game, you cannot have a situation where your games are out after the console you built it for is done. Like, because once you do that, whatever you built this game for, it's just not going to be competitive. And in fact, this would allow indies that are smaller but innovate more in the gameplay realm. You take 10 years to make this big AAA game, an indie game comes out a year before it that already has systems that are far more modern and easy to use and like hit better than something that's using, I mean, I say this as like, go back and play BioShock. I just went back and played the BioShock DLCs because I realized I missed them. Wow. The controls, look, the game's still good, but the controls are, and even just the difference between BioShock 2 and Infinite is like a console gen difference in how well it handles. That's going to start happening to AAA games if they take this long to come out. So they have to fix that. But I also wonder what you think about, you're making me think about the opportunity cost of like these big online games. Yes, if you get a Fortnite, that will print money for you for a very long time. Congrats, high fives all around. But you understand that like if you have that out and that's the game everyone plays, then if you have 2 other studios trying to make a live service game, those are going to fail because everyone went to the other one you funded. Like you should really be funding like maybe going, and only if the studio wants to do it, a live service game every 5 years. I know it's not a lot, but because if one of them hits, all these other ones, there's only so much room. We're seeing Fortnite, all like Marathon comes out. It's doing, I don't know, what is it, mediocre to bad-ish, but it's found a fan base, I've noticed. Like, and then there's a few other ones taking off right now, but you've seen Fortnite go down. There's only so much market share for these persistent games. And if you're a company that's like, we're going to make 10 persistent games, how on earth could there be enough time in the day for the market share that's out there to play all of them? Whereas if you go back to making 40 to 70, I guess now $40 to $80 games, and they're 20 hours or even just 10, someone who bought that will finish it and then buy another game. That to me seems like, I know you're not shooting for the moon and how much money you make, but that seems like a much more reliable way to pull in money. I mean, look at Resident Evil, Capcom and Pragmata. Capcom's kind of proving the tight 20 to 30 hour game. They keep coming back every year for another Capcom game, and we didn't put out a game that sucks out all the oxygen in the room for years.
Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody has the answer, I think PlayStation sort of gone about it in a way where it's like, okay, we still had single player games come out. Mm-hmm. Like they still had, you had your Yote, Saros just came out, DS2. You've got external partners that can do it like a DS2. They went crazy with like a lot of exclusivity agreements. They're partnering a lot with like some studios in China. You had your Ragnarok, your Ratchet, Gran Turismo. Like you had like those games were there, right? I think it's easy to have the blinders on and think that we didn't have the single player stuff come out. And like they know they can't walk away from those games.
Right.
I think it's just like what they do in the next 5 years, I think will say a lot about what PlayStation experienced throughout this generation. Because now it's like, oh, we tried to do 12 something of these live service games, didn't work out. We canceled the majority of them. Now we're seeing, and this is like new leadership came in too. Now, granted, Herman Hall still leads the studios, which he was installed in 2019, but you have Hideaki Nishino now leading the whole organization. And Herman reports to him. And I think you're seeing one of those early culture shift and strategy changes right now in the not doing PC stuff anymore. So I think you're going to see a very particular way of these games now being led and released under Hideaki Nishino. I'm not sure how firm he'll be on how many live service games they'll do. If they want to do, like, as you're implying, right, you might have like genre crossover, for example. So it's like you're sort of cannibalizing your own games at that point. I don't think they're going to walk away from it. It's just they have to be more fiscally responsible about it. Like, another problem with Concord, right, was they spent that long making it, expecting it would find an audience.
Yeah.
When realistically, what you should be like putting these games out there as fast as you can, even if they're unfinished. Because then the audience decides, right, like, this game has no future.
It's true. Like, you launch it with 4 maps instead of 12, but a year early, and, well, if no one plays those 4 maps, give up. If they do, scale up quick, make more maps, right? Like, that's what you do. That's kind of like what is it? Rocket League basically did that. A basic game, everyone loved it, and then they just made more and more and more content as quickly as possible.
Pretty much.
This piece of content is brought to you by the Minis Forum N5 Max, a next-generation AI NAS designed to combine private AI capability, large-capacity storage, high-speed data flow, and advanced infrastructure into one system. It is not just a traditional NAS, and it is not simply a compact local AI machine or a few AI capabilities sprinkled on. It is something that brings value together from several different types of capabilities: local AI, high capacity long-term storage, high-speed NVMe working tier, high bandwidth networking, advanced infrastructure and recoverability, into a platform that is designed for future expansion as well. It comes with Strix Halo and AI Max Plus 395, 16 core with 40 CUs of RDNA 3.5. It can also come with 64 gigabytes of LPDDR5X, 126 TOPS total, and it has a very cool, very sleek design. Honestly, this feels like one of the highest quality pieces of kit I've ever held, and it has 2 RJ45s, USB 4 V2, 2 of those, 80 gigabit per second, and then another USB 4 40 gigabit per second as well. If you are interested in this product and want to support Moore's Law is Dead, please click the link below, and if you buy it, make sure you use offer code BROKENSILICON to save as much as possible on it. Thank you to Minis Forum for sponsoring this piece of content, and, well, support a sponsor that supports Moore's Law is Dead, Minis Forum. All right. Well, I want to pivot to this here. So Curry King 3 writes in and says, what is your glass half empty and glass half full interpretation of PlayStation's shifting single player games back to exclusives? In which ways do you view exclusives in general positively and negatively? Which contextual factors matter the most to you and to the audience? Do you think it is possible exclusive games on one platform may give an opportunity for competing similar games on another platform? And that second part, there's something I've been harping about lately, which was, I just want more games. Like, I think Gran Turismo being an exclusive created Forza Motorsport, which a lot of people say is better. So you wouldn't get, even if you can't play Gran Turismo on an Xbox, so what? You got Forza. And you see competition back and forth between these consoles. And, it would be cool if we all could play everything. But ultimately, whatever business model leads to the most games, that's what I'm for. And I think there's no way to avoid it. There were more games on PS3 and 360. There were. And they were. When there were 3 strong consoles that had exclusives, that is when we did not have enough time to play these games. And at least in the traditional sense, outside of live service, before that. And you can say that was a correlation, that was a fluke. I don't know if it was a fluke. It might have been, when you have more exclusives, you're forced to compete more. But I wonder what you think about that and, like, the good or the bad you see in PlayStation pivoting more towards exclusives.
Well, I find exclusivity is a matter of defining the platform, giving it like a characteristic. because you think of Kratos, that's PlayStation. You think Astrobot, PlayStation, and Sackboy, Nathan Drake. I mean, PlayStation's got a treasure trove of IP. But something as simple as Mario and Nintendo, everyone understands that whole point there. From a actual game perspective, what I have always appreciated about it as well is the teams can focus on one platform. And they get really deep into extracting the most out of that hardware. And this has always been like such a novel thing with PlayStation, is it always tends to punch above its weight for whatever the hardware is on paper. Mm-hmm. It's like that console optimization, like fine tuning the hell out of it, like pulling every like goddamn frame you can out of that system. It was great with like more obscure architectures. The PS2 is a pain to make for, PS3 doubly so. PS4 made it tremendously easier, but then you've got the challenge of like the Jaguar CPU. But whatever the case is, right? PS5 with the SSD, Tempest 3D Audio Tech engine. Mm-hmm. The first party teams can really lean deep into that hardware. And that's how you get games that punch so far above their weight when you try to do a comparable like PC thing. Doing PC, people love doing that. Making a PC and seeing if they can match it. And it's crazy how like this low power, like economies of scale box is outputting games that look as gorgeous as they do. For their time, like whether it's on PS1 through 5, like for their time, each game really punches above its weight, and it just sells the identity of the platform. And so it does. By that sheer virtue, it creates a competitive landscape of, I wonder, Microsoft and Nintendo wanting to do better as well.
I wonder how much of it too is when you only have one platform, you're not trying to cater to everyone. I mean, look, PlayStation's a huge market. Everyone who plays every type of game would own a PlayStation, but like if this game's only on PC and it's an RTS, there is zero thought going into, can this even work on a controller? Because even if you can plug a keyboard and mouse into a PlayStation these days or an Xbox, you're going to have to make it work. Does that and I wonder how much of that's true for like a PlayStation exclusive or an Xbox exclusive as well. Like, this is the game we want to make. We know this will be the best game. We know this is the controller that will run on it. And we're not going to spend time worrying about how a release rollout will go on Steam or like this. It just needs to be the best it can be and be good. And I feel like there's something that's been a little bit lost when you start seeing something put on everything. And then you're like, are we really not going to consider like how we do this on Steam if it's going to go, or on Xbox? And you can do that later, but it's like to put it on a platform first and then maybe later try to port it. I think even that's very different, because then you're kind of making it work, making it special for the other platform, but you kind of lose something if you're forced to put it on 100 things at once. I think we're seeing the economics just don't make sense, which I think has been very surprising, by the way, that the economics are demonstrating that going on multiple platforms actually isn't always a silver bullet for more money.
Right. It's not. But it's like always so platform dependent, like the VR space, for example. I've always like seen a number of accounts that PSVR 2 games can sometimes sell just as well, if not better, than MetaQuest games. Mm-hmm. It's like MetaQuest has 20 times fold the install base of a PSVR 2, but that audience is like super dedicated and like it's very sticky for all the like the attach rate per headset. You can like ship there and sell really well. That was the thing for PS Vita for the longest time. Like Vita install base like 15, 16 million something units, but like a lot of indie devs thrived on it. Yeah. They thrived on it because like people like just bought games there. And that like wasn't the case when you were shipping on Steam. So I think it's definitely being mindful of the platform and the audience. But above all else, like games should not be greenlit unless there's, some sort of thoughtful idea that whoever's funding it believes in it. Right. If they think the game's going to be good, like somebody should bankroll it. And that's PlayStation's methodology for the longest time. At least on paper, they've always, been pretty consistent on the teams have creative agency. If we think this, can go somewhere and that team believes in it, they'll give them some money to start doing some.
That changed though for a little bit under Herman Hulst, where they were trying to make the Returnal devs and everyone make a live service game. And that was the one time where you saw them, I think, really trip up. Like even when they made mistakes with Vita and PS3, they had games. They still had games on PS5. Don't get mad at me in the comments, but when there was a dearth of how many games you would think there would be, it was like the one time they kind of tried to force everyone to do something right. And now hopefully we see this reverse next generation is what I'm hoping.
Well, see, that's what I would posit though, is that I don't think it was necessarily a forced thing. This is where the gray area comes in, because the teams have creative autonomy. You know, nobody's ever assigned anything, but there is a weird relationship of the company wants live service games. That's like a big initiative. If you're a subsidiary, if you're a first party studio, you know that you have to pitch to your parent organization. You have to get approval. What's the way to do that? Some teams might have felt like, okay, maybe it should be a live service thing. I feel like Blue Point was probably the biggest victim of that, because it was like the craziest, you know, studio shutdown of like these guys were so good at making remasters, ports, remakes, but it's like, what does the team want to do? I don't think they would sell to Sony if they weren't given the sort of creative agency of, oh, they want to start making original content. Because when they were shut down, everyone's like, why didn't you just make them remake a game? It's like, well, they don't make their studios do anything. The studios get to choose, but they have to pitch. And allegedly, Blue Point pitched a number of things. The conditional green light they had was because they were working on Ragnarok at the time. They were a support studio on that game. So I would think the thought process there was, you know, we've worked with the source material. Now let's try and do our own original God of War thing. Oh, let's do a live service thing. We'll probably get approval. And, you know, there's the story. So I think it's a weird gray area. Some probably definitely felt the pressure to go for live service when maybe they shouldn't have.
Jamie Witters writes in, and he says, thinking beyond raster and ray tracing performance, what Gen 9 console weakness would you like Helix and PS6 to resolve? This one's actually a tricky one for me. And this is why I'll be fascinated what Sony announces and what we see too with Helix, because I think they work pretty well, but I wonder, like, what is there a weakness in this current generation you wish would be fixed?
Yeah, that's tough. It's tough because I think this is the gen that like was like nothing but quality of life. Like, I feel like right when they came out, as easy as it is to like complain about this generation, it's like, dude, load times are basically gone. Yeah. And everything got a frame rate and resolution bump. And consoles historically, like, you did not get 60 frames per second on nearly every single game. Yeah. Now we have that, and we have the instant loading. So I think that's a tough question that even PlayStation's trying to answer, because that's going to mean, how do they sell you a PlayStation 6? I'm not sure if, you know, like more ray tracing and path tracing is really going to do that. You know what I mean?
Well, let's skip ahead to that, because I actually got quite a lot to say about that for this episode. So Foos Your Dues writes in and says, we already know that the PS6 and Helix will be based on the silicon from AMD, from RDNA 5 and Zen 6. So there's bound to be some commonality between the two. Oh, yeah. The PS5, though, had custom I/O controllers, a Tempest 3D audio engine. And so I'm curious, though, to hear what unique features you guys think the PS6 would have on top of whatever fruits Sony's partnerships with AMD, like Project Amethyst, yield. Are there any particular developer pain points to address, like I/O controller and SSD combo in the PS5? What do you think Sony could do for secret sauce? And I'll let you go first on this one, because I've got a ton, but I'm curious if anything comes to mind. Like, what would be something they might work on as an advantage that's custom?
So we would be thinking directly on the hardware side.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like
if you have a software idea, tell me. You know.
No, but I feel like they've telegraphed this a little bit, right? Like they've not been completely silent on this. They've talked about this a decent amount with that Project Amethyst collaboration. You know, like neural arrays, for example. Like they kind of like touched on a few sort of key pillars that they like. You have Mark Cerny straight up saying, "I'd love to put this in another console." So I think they've sort of said a little bit as far as directionality, but they've also, you know, like at the end of the PS5 Pro seminar, it was like raster's not going to be the big thing. It's going to be ML. It's going to be, you know, ray tracing.
Yeah.
So
go on.
No. So I mean, hardware wise, I would think that. I'd be curious to hear what you think. But so the point I make about what could they do, I think they actually acknowledge this with this console cycle. So with PlayStation 5 in 2020, like it was sensory experiences. The DualSense with the haptics and the triggers, 3D audio, a big jump in, you know, the audio experience. So like, I think they've already acknowledged, even back in 2020, because of diminishing returns, that realistically, how do we sell these things? So I think the sensory stuff is going a long way for them. And I would have to imagine that'll be a big part of it too.
What sensory things do you think they could add? Like they're not going to pipe smells into your room, probably.
I know that's the thing. For example, I don't know if you remember, like from DualShock 3 to 4, like DualShock 4, you're like, oh, this controller feels fantastic, and then you hold up the DualShock 3 and you think it's a Fisher Price toy.
Yeah,
that same leap happened with the DualSense to the DualShock 4. So like as silly as it sounds, I'd love to see a next gen controller. Like really refine the triggers and the haptics. I think that's one element of, you want that wow factor. When somebody for the first time picks up a PS6 controller, you want them to think, oh, this feels like a genuine jump to me. And that's hard to do when visually that might, that's going to be the thing people are butting up against. I mean, the other thing too, right? Surely you'd get this, is like, there's more so a ceiling on the development partners out there that can even make games that are like that gorgeous and beautiful. Like, let's really think about that for a second. There's so few studios that are going to really push the envelope. The overwhelming majority of software coming out nowadays can run on a PS4 all day, every day, no problem. It's tough to say.
So, yeah, and that's where. Let me ask you this though. You said the controller. Before I get to like a whole spiel I actually want to ask you this, because I heard, I kind of thought of this idea while I was talking to Colin Moriarty on a Sacred Symbols, like, to keep costs reasonable. What do you think about the idea of, yes, look, there will be the DualSense 2 or whatever they call it, the DualShock 6, if they just pivot back, I don't know. And I assume it will do everything better. The vibration will be more sensitive in more areas. It'll feel cooler. The lights will work better. Everything will be better. Better. But if it was up to me, what I would pitch to Sony is, we're going to make the DualSense better in every way. Great. And you can buy it and it will work on the PS6. Maybe we even let it work on the PS5. But maybe we should be able to carry over PS5 controllers so that we can sell the console without a controller. Now, there'll be a bundle with a controller, but like at a minimum, wouldn't it be nice if you're someone who has like 4 DualSenses, and yes, you buy a PS6 controller, if your friends want to join you, you don't need to now go buy a bunch of controllers again. What do you think about the idea of them reusing the PS5 controller, but still having a new edition you can buy if you want it?
Well, see, Tom, I feel like we're getting down a rabbit hole, because that's the $1 million question, is how do they make it? How do they make the console affordable? So I think at this point, who the hell knows what they would do? Maybe if you would have asked me that 2 years ago, I would have thought, no way. Like that you have to ship a next gen controller with it. But like, I feel like we're in slightly uncharted waters here. And I say slightly because I feel like the expectation should still be, it's just going to be packaged with the controller it's supposed to have. But at this point, the biggest problem is memory. So maybe just storage is where they ship the machine with like 500 gigs instead of,
the cost difference between a terabyte and half a terabyte, actually, if you're not like getting, fleeced by HP to upgrade your storage built in, it's like $10 or something, I think. Like, I know, and even with marked up prices, it's maybe 20. So I don't see that as, that's probably, now, do they go with 1 terabyte instead of 2? Maybe I could see that, I think that's totally possible.
That's what I'm saying though. Like, I don't know where it makes the most sense. You would think anything memory related. I don't know what their margins are in control. I don't know what it's going to cost them to make a controller.
I think their controllers, if you buy them separate, actually make pretty good money. I don't think it costs them more than $30 to make one of those things. And that's why they can include one with every console. So I guess from that perspective, though, it's like, well, how much money are they really going to save if they don't include the controller? I mean, $30, is that really where we make the cut then, if it's only that much? And it kind of looks, I still think they should, by the way, make the last gen controllers work with next gen and vice versa. I think that'd be a very cool move. I don't know if you remember, I think the PS4 controller worked with the PS3 or something. If you plugged it in, there was something interesting there. Yeah,
you could plug, like PS3 accepts like generic, so day one you could just like plug it in via USB, and it and then you can register it via Bluetooth. But like the thought process is though, like there's an optics issue too. Maybe they save $30-something not
That's
shipping.
What I'm saying, yeah.
But like that looks really bad when your PlayStation, here's your new big shiny box, and all the headlines that get to like,
unless it's $500, right? And so you can actually say, oh wow, they did make it cheap. I think it would have to be that cheap to not include the controller. You're kind of convincing me they have to include the controller, actually.
You can't have like legacy media like this gets to like CNN. The new console doesn't have the controller. Like you can't. There's an optics cost there that I don't think they can afford.
Yeah, I agree, and I find, especially if you're good at economies of scale and manufacturing, which that's probably Sony's strongest suit when it comes to how they compete. Like, I mean, I think Xbox is just openly admitting they didn't handle the RAM as well as PlayStation. That's why their console costs more now. Like, if you could, like, I've seen some insane proposals online. Like, what if they cut part of the die off to save $20? I'm like, no. You're not going to save $20 or even $50 and make the console a third weaker. You're going to add $100 so you can get away with charging $700. Like that's, and so from that perspective, yeah, I think you have to include the controller. Like that's just not, again, unless they manage to make it $500, because you would have to have this thing so cheap that people don't ask questions. If a few corners are cut, they'd be like, well, you listened, we wanted to save money, but even then, okay, we'll make it $550 and include a controller. I still think that looks less stupid. Yeah. Well, so, okay. My answer to like what they can do, I had a disclaimer I wrote down, like, I'm not Mark Cerny. Like, he's PlayStation's lead architect. I'm not. His whole job is taking in data, interviewing devs, and then doing R&D with AMD to simulate what will work best. So it's hard for me to guess like what custom things they would do to the hardware when I like don't have all of the data he has. How could I possibly know what weakness they've found? But in preparation for this recording, I did go through some old PlayStation 6 documents I had. Now I have to say, these ones that I noticed some weird things I didn't notice before, I think they're from before the PS5 Pro came out. So who knows what they decided? I can only tell you what they were thinking of doing. But one thing that became obvious to me is they are, and I've said this before though, obsessed with minimizing power and cost. Like they have line after line that's just like worried about EU legislation, must have low power options, like consoles need to be cost constrained moving forward. So there's definitely something here where they don't want this to use a lot of power and they don't want this to cost too much. And I think their goal is going to be to give you 85%, 90% of Helix performance for substantially lower cost. And AI and ray tracing, that's another thing, is constantly mentioned. And so I think you're just going to see Mark Cerny do what they've always done. They're going to look at whatever the new thing is, that's going to be like ray tracing and AI stuff. And then they're going to min-max their design. So when you program it to the metal around this, it just gives you, it punches above its weight, like you've been saying. I mean, you look at the Series X, I think that die was like 10, 20% larger than the PS5 without offering more performance. And that's because it was built to also be a gaming server CPU. And Sony doesn't want that. They just want gaming. And so they're going to min-max, pull out things, and like, I don't know how to put it, like notice like exactly this much of whatever, when it hits this, perfectly renders at the frame at this frame rate, and we don't need any more than that. We can save money after that. But in addition to that, I also just want to put out this leak here today. I kind of overlooked this actually for years now, and I just noticed that they directly say VFI, which stands for video frame interpolation, and obviously other things like super resolutions like PSSR. But so I guess they are also looking at the, as some would say, fake frames, generated frames in between the real frames. And so when I see things like AI, ray tracing, PSSR, keeping costs in control, I just think whatever they're going to do, they're going to try to make it feel like 4K 120 and cut costs after that. Because like what you were saying before, Ryan, it's going to be really hard to convince people to upgrade. I mean, this is all quality of life. And so I think all of it, everything needs to be cost constrained this generation. It feels very PS4 like to me, actually, what they're likely to do. Whereas the PS3, they just, some of it was mistakes, but they went crazy with all these like 4 USB ports. You got 3 SD card readers. I think this time is like the PS4 where they realize this has to be cheap because we're not going to get them off of the other generation unless it is.
Mm-hmm. The thing I always say is the onus is on them to make it compelling and affordable. It's their job to make it enticing. So I mean, if they can actually sort of stand by that gold lettering on PS5 retail boxes of 4K 120, then that would probably be a pretty damn compelling pitch. the thing I'd also propose to you is I think the other upside is the software.
Yeah.
So PlayStation loves doing new UIs every generation, from the XMB to the dynamic menu to now the PS5 home screen. So, yeah, I sometimes think to myself, like, a big pitch is going to be the landing page. First thing you see when you turn on that console, and what sort of quality of life can they do there? Obviously it's just meant to facilitate launching your game. But, if they can do some very snappy, quick things with like a picture-in-picture mode, maybe do a pin to side that's way more responsive and easier to use, really elevate the voice assistance on the console because it's got very basic, 2010 style voice commands. Like, this
especially
is
the same as PS4. Yeah.
This is the land of, it is the land of ML. It is the land of AI. I'm sure they're going to try and shoehorn that in some way to make it a very, user-friendly experience. One key pillar of PS5 was like activity cards, and those fell completely flat on their face.
Yeah.
Like, they basically turned off the functionality. They don't do what they used to anymore. So they like to experiment in that realm as well. So I think there's something they can explore there.
Yeah, every controller has a microphone on it, so I guess you could have a situation where, and they could have an ad that shows this, like you press the button and you're like, pull up, what is it, God of War Laufey? Am I saying that right? Laufey. Pull up God of War Laufey. Also tell my friends that I'm going to have a new video to send them soon. Also let me know when my friend Brock gets on Helldivers 3. Like, you could do all of these things, and if it could do all of that and you didn't need to press a button, it just pulled everything up for you. Yeah, I guess that could be quite a distinguishing feature, especially if it was actually, this would be the question I have, is it actually running the agent in the console to help you? Or is it just sending it all to the cloud, and if the PSN is down or it requires PlayStation Plus for it to even work? Yeah. That would be my concern with that. But I would hope they could make something that simple work at the local level so that it really is snappy. There's no lag to the cloud or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's also the conceivable thing about pricing. If you had to get that to run locally, do they have the headroom for that? So,
yeah, I don't know. The people I've talked to behind the scenes, like, what size can you get a decent AI model down to? Probably in 2027, and their answer is, generally speaking, 2 to 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes for sure. And so I think they'll have 30. So I think they might have just enough room to do that. But you could, I guess we'll see. Like, it'd be really interesting because I think a big play they could make next gen, and this is an argument I've been making for a while now, is that when Xbox Helix and the PS6 come out, I believe in terms of AI and ray tracing performance, it's going to be a joke. It's going to be almost like when the PS3 and 360 came out. There were a few years there where genuinely you needed a really expensive PC to actually match those consoles. Granted, they didn't have a lot of RAM, but whatever. The consoles were programmed to the metal. They made it work for the most part. Like, I think there's a chance when this comes out, like, this is very different. Like, when the PS4 came out, this is the equivalent of like a $200-$300 graphics card. And so, yeah, the whole PC would cost more. But if you had a PC, just get a $200 graphics card, don't get a PS4. PS5, somewhat similar. There was the mining boom at the time, so that complicates things. But if you could get it for a reasonable price, like a PS5 GPU was probably $400, so maybe a little cheaper. I think in ray tracing next gen, it's going to be like $600-$700 for this thing or more. And this is going to be a situation where, right, but like, not everyone buys the newest graphics card every year. So if you're a developer and you're looking at something that has all of this ray tracing performance, you're going to go, man, I guess we'll support it on PC, but it's going to run pretty crappy. And like, if Sony could have like a package, like, this is the PlayStation Dev Kit experience, and we will run you through everything so easily. I wonder how many third-party exclusives they could get out of just telling them, like, making it the easiest to program for. But then also with AI, having this AI companion thing that helps you in the menus when you're not in a game. But the second you're in a game, it's just a plug-in third parties have a package for that they can use to control the AI in their own game. So it's like, if you partner with us and use PlayStation AI, we've already got a machine learning bot built in that you plug into every game. It's already programmed. It's already done. It's general purpose. And you can just make it be your ally. Just tell your ally to watch your back while you walk in a building. It will do it. And now if you're a studio, you don't need to make your own. I wonder how much of an advantage that could be. And maybe that could justify like using 4 gigs of RAM for just AI, because in the menus, it helps you. In a game, it just switches over to controlling units or something.
Yeah, great points. 100%. The thing that I would be concerned about is that the more like bespoke of a feature you offer, the more, if anything, that creates more tension with your development partners. Because if they utilize a feature like that in their game, that complicates porting efforts to a platform that doesn't have that.
Well, they don't have to use it though, right? Like Naughty Dog will use it, Santa Monica will use it, but there's this black hole here that will not do anything if you don't want it to. And if you want to leverage, like now they do it with like what the Tempest engine for audio. Like they could do that here. Like this is just our AI engine. Like if you want to program your own, you can bolt in whatever third party thing and it will run on it, but you don't have to if you haven't already done it. So I think that's probably already what they do with audio, right? If you want to use Tempest, you can. If you don't want to, there's kind of a fallback. It just knows how to use a general engine or just turn itself off.
Right. I think the sort of the plug-in tools for it are relatively straightforward as far as if you want to use it or not. But that's what I mean. Like if the tools aren't there, the tools aren't there. There has to be something that makes it conducive to it. You can use it, and if not, you should be fine. But I think from like start to finish making a game, if you try and frame it around that becomes a problem for somebody else or for another platform rather.
Lucas writes in, he says, I recently played Left 4 Dead 2 with a friend, and we were frequently frustrated by the AI companion stupidity. Yeah, I haven't played that for many years. I wonder if I would find them dumb too. So improvements have definitely been made since then in the latest games, but not nearly as significant as many other aspects of game designs and graphics, in my opinion. Do you think AI models of today will really push that forward? Most of the talk about AI as the future of games has been fairly abstract so far. Might this be a killer feature for PS6 and, of course, Helix? Your in-game buddies being radically more competent. See, I personally do. I think that the ability to like play Fallout 5 and talk into your mic, hey, watch my back while I go through this cave, and the person follows you and points the gun behind you to protect you, and they actually do it. I think that, and then when you talk to people and you don't need to just have the 4 options, you can actually just talk to them and they generally know what you're saying. I think as long as they can get that working competently locally, again, I don't want this to have to go to the cloud and come back. I think that could be like a massively distinguished feature. Like imagine a version of Fallout 5 that they launched to PS5 because they have to make their money back. But like on that console, on Xbox Series X, to use the AI, it like pauses the game for 10 seconds, or you just have to use an old system. That would feel like a generation behind.
I would be inclined to agree. It's always a little, nerve-wracking thing when you consider how the AI is going to be utilized. So in that case, I think it's, well, my concern is like the voice talent. If the AI is talking back to you or something, because then it gets to a, more of an ethical thing. But
yeah, I guess you'd have to have voice actors record all of the main lines of the game anyways, but then sign the contract and go, there's going to be times they say something that we didn't think you'd have to talk about. So are we okay to use your voice to respond? And then how do you pay them for that? Because I don't know how they pay right now. To a degree, it has to be how big your part is. Like a side character in GTA 6 probably gets paid $500 to $1,000 for a side mission, whereas a lead actor is, I don't know how much, tens of thousands of dollars or more. Like, if it turns out one side character becomes a fan favorite and they're always talking to them, is there something in the contract, like a mechanism that's hit where they can track that and go, actually, you get a bonus? I don't know.
Right. So that's my thing. Like contextually for gameplay, like there's massive upside, massive upside for it to be so contextually aware of like what you're doing, how you're doing it, and being able to give commands in a way that is not, very dumb, sort of the 1.0 version of how we've always played games of like, here's 4 preset commands, go here, guard, and it's, so no doubt there is undeniably a lot of upside to something like that. I would just always frame it in the mind of like, well, if the character is going to speak back to you, like for me, at least I have some ethical grounds I want covered as far as the human talent that's still making the games. So for an NPC character, if they're having dialogue lines and they can contextually speak back to you, being fully aware of what you're saying, that's a concern for me.
I guess to be fair too, there's a lot of games where they don't need to AI generate the audio at all. Like it's just understanding. Like you say they make another SOCOM, you're like, watch my back, affirmative, He just recorded affirmative. He's just like, there's no need for him to record. And like, but then you could think like Kingdom Come Deliverance 3, and they're just like, you just say like a whole paragraph and they're like, that's a good idea. And it's like, yeah, you don't have anything else to say? I've been talking for a while here. That might come off quite weird. But if they could do that, it would work.
No, yeah, I agree. I like that's the thing where I'd be like, it'd be cool. Like I don't mind if it's still the sort of dumb way of responses, but the AI can very much be hyper aware of like what you're doing and how you're doing it, and not sort of get in the way. You know, like those silly moments in like The Last of Us, for example. Like that's an easy one. Like Ellie, you know, just walks right in front of clickers, and it's, you know, it breaks immersion, right? To have that like a sort of model in place for that character movement, and they're so much more aware of like how stupid it would be to just get in front of enemies, right? Like,
you know, a thing that's funny about that is like a generational thing. Like if my girlfriend were to watch me play The Last of Us and Ellie does that, she wouldn't say anything because she plays video games and she just knows, oh, that's a side character. That doesn't break my immersion because I know they always do stupid stuff. But if like my grandpa walked in and saw that, he'd be like, what? Tom, why isn't it killing her? What the heck? And then I have to just explain like it just because they think it would be a really annoying game if that made you lose. That's why. And I have to explain why that's okay and preferable. Yeah, what would be funny too is if there's like again like Kingdom Come Deliverance 3, it'll be funny if they have like these, like they didn't generate audio, so there's just these 10 pre-recorded things that they thought would cover all bases, and you're just like, yeah, I just bought this house, and then she just like goes on this monologue about her death of her dad, and you're like, whoa, what is this? This is not what I'm talking about at all. It'll be frustrating, but I think there will be probably some funny examples if a studio doesn't put enough effort into it. They're like, we got it. There's no way these 10 answers won't cover whatever they say to us. And then it just sounds completely insane.
Yeah.
That's what I'd hope we'd avoid.
Well, so here's the other thing too, though, is that like a lot of Western studios are at least kind of being mindful of, you know, how there's like an ethical issue that a lot of fans are like nervous about. A lot of studios East, you know, China in particular,
China. Yeah.
It's very normalized. And like game development studios are growing rapidly there, and they're putting out so many games that are at scale that are competing with Western studios, and they will use it, and they'll use it in every way possible that steps on any sort of moral like stances that people have here.
Yeah, they don't think about like ownership necessarily in the same way when it comes to like IP as well, just intrinsically, culturally. So they might just, they don't care.
So there will be examples. Those games will come out, and you're going to have people that also play those games and think this is amazing. Why don't we do this here? You know, but you've got a lot of Western studios that are careful and mindful about it, and you know, rightfully so for like human workers. You know, like that's the thing with, you know, voice talent in the industry in particular, voice talent, motion capture, is that there needs to be protections or, you know, unionization to protect the rights of those workers. So. It gets into a whole can of worms, but like Eastern studios are going to do it for sure.
Well, that's why what I would recommend is it seems like oftentimes the people's answers to so many problems is, especially if it's concerning to them and ethical, it's like, oh, either we're going to have no regulation whatsoever because that will get in the way of innovation. Okay, there's problems with that. But then the other side is we're just going to ban it. We can't do it. You know, I would recommend they get ahead of this, like, and they say, okay, well, this is how we price out. Like, because again, my GTA 6 side character example, there's a side mission. You can talk to him. Turns out the guy's hilarious. He makes interesting notes. So this one side mission, a guy got paid $1,000 for instead of $50,000 for, like one of the bigger actors. Like people are like uploading YouTube videos and it's going viral. And there's people are spending a whole day talking to this guy. And it's like, well, this doesn't seem fair. Two things you could argue. One, well, before you wouldn't have gotten any money and no one of you have noticed your character. So now you're at least blowing up as an actor. But two, there should be some mechanism in place where there is I guess how you would do it is there's a limit to how much this character can come up with new things to say unless they think it's worth giving them a bonus. And like, it's up to the actor to decide. So we'll give you, but then you worry about the studios taking advantage of them. But it's like, hey, we're going to pay you $1,000. We think this might be popular, though. We'll pay you an extra $5 if you let them talk as much as possible. But no, we're not going to give you $50,000 if it goes viral. And, you know, that's the sort of thing. But they should have an answer like that, I think, before this happens. Because otherwise, yes, some studios could just get steamrolled by a Chinese studio that doesn't care.
Yeah. But that's like, not, it wouldn't happen. Like that's, you know, That's the like, as far as regulation is concerned or getting ahead of these things, we're already well past that shit.
Yeah.
That should have happened 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, so we'll see.
That's why it's a Wild West. Like it's gonna, the worst case scenarios are gonna happen, and best case ones too.
Yeah. Well put. Jessie here really can't take it when she sees rabbits out in the wild. I'm not kidding. She wants to chase them so much that she starts visibly shaking while she stares at them. And honestly, I'm kind of the same when it comes to overpriced Microsoft software. I can't believe that some people, especially in these times where many component costs are inflated, would waste hundreds of dollars overpaying for Microsoft Office or Windows. And you don't have to if you go to CDkeyoffer.com. That's right, CDkeyoffer.com is a sponsor of this piece of content, and they are, I believe, the longest running main, like, large sponsor for Moore's Law is Dead, going all the way back when I lived in a different state. And that's because they provide reliable keys for Microsoft Office Professional and for Windows 11. And, you know, they also have an offering of a ton of different games that you can get on a discount as well. And if you want to support the channel, then go to cdkeyoffer.com today through the link in the description. Just clicking on that link helps. But then also get yourself these keys if you need them and save by using offer code BrokenSilicon to save 25% on all Microsoft software, and then Die Shrink to save 3% on everything else on the website. Once again, thanks to cdkeyoffer.com for sponsoring yet another, maybe what, 1,000th piece of content that they've sponsored. And thank you all for supporting a sponsor that supports Moore's Law is Dead. Another Chris writes in, "Hi Ryan, what is your ideal console? Do hardware specs even matter to you? Do you ever really feel like we're limited by hardware? By ideal hardware, I'm referring to like hardware that can run specific features, 120 FPS minimums, 4K native. Do you care if it's native? Do you care if it's upscaled? Extreme textures, tessellation, ray tracing. What do you consider?" I guess because it really depends on the time, but like, what would you have considered a great console 5 years ago, and what do you think the hardware needs to do, or like, what would you consider great hardware now?
I think they've really dialed it in for PS4 and PS5. So like back to the PS2 and PS3 example, like PS3 is so well known for it. PS2 is the same. I think a lot of people tend to forget that PlayStation 2 with its like vector processing unit, like developers hated making
and dev
games
kits that had their manuals in Japanese, and Sony said tough shit. I mean,
developers hated making games for that thing. And then they heard that and said, "Oh yeah, well, get f***ed on PS3. We'll make it 10 times." So like, I think they've fully recognized like you have to make it very conducive to make games for. And like, that was the big thing with Mark Cerny taking over the responsibilities of architecting the system, is that they like created a dialogue with development partners before they would just make the box and say, "Go kick rocks, make games for it." Mm-hmm. Now they scout studios, they do site visits, and they ask people what they want. So like, the point I'm making here is that I think the dialed in boxes of today are foundationally really good. And that, you know, some of the examples mentioned here, right? Frame rate, native 4K, upscaled, you know, tessellation, ray trace, like, sure, give me all those things. I think my ideal console, though, is one that puts the development community first, because they're the ones that are going to make the game. You know, they're the ones that make the software. So as long as PlayStation continues to do something like that, I really appreciate. I guess to give a more direct answer, like PlayStation 3, as much as it is a pain in the ass to make games for, I do like how it is the ultimate PlayStation. And I always call it that because it's got a PS2 SoC on the motherboard.
Yeah, that's how they solve backwards compatibility. They just put a PS2 in it.
Just put a PS2 in it. And, you know, I mean, the damn thing is, unless we're going to really spend a lot of time creating a really reliable emulation layer, put a PS3 SoC in this bitch. Come on. Give me a PS3 and 2 SoC. Make sure you have a laser in there that can read every disk. That's what I want. It'll never happen, but that's what I'd love to see.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So I don't know how much you've heard about this. This is something I've discussed a lot on my channel and a few times that I've gone on Sacred Symbols. I feel like we have a perfect catalyst here of what would be required to solve the PS3 backwards compatibility thing on PS6. Let's be clear about this. I've heard they've had a backwards compatibility emulator for PS3 since PS4. What I was told is it just didn't run well. And like, 3 games ran well. They're like, Jaguar CPU is not quite fast enough. But they think that if they would have worked hard, they actually could have gotten like third half of the games to run on the PS4. And then the PS5 comes out and they never did anything. So I want to be clear. If they wanted backwards compatibility now, I think they could just do it. It might take effort, but I really think they could. We've seen Xbox do it. I think PlayStation could do it, even though it would be harder. I think they could. And certainly they must have developed something, because there's no way for streaming games they're just going to use cell processors for the next 30 years. So I know they have some backup probably already running on their servers, honestly, when they stream PS3 games. They're just not telling people like, yeah, we have the PS3 emulator and that's how we're streaming God of War to you. But I think at this point, like, we have a situation where AI tools should make streamlining basic tasks easier. Ray tracing's here. I don't know if you've seen this thing from NVIDIA called RTX Remix, where they just take really old games and inject ray tracing. Because they're old, it's easy, it still runs well with full path tracing, but it looks like quite incredible. I think you'll be able to kind of do that with the PS6, with how much better it will be. Like, it'll finally get there in terms of ray tracing, catching up with like the strongest PCs of right now. That I wonder if it's just like, can they really do, is it kind of too late to do full PS3 backwards compatibility? Like, I think you have Nixes and give them AI assistance and just let them release a remaster every 3 months. This is folklore month, and then, this one's resistance package month. This one's Killzone package month. And I kind of think they have to do this, because we have to remember the PS3 had pressure sensitive buttons. So there's half of the exclusives. They have to reprogram it directly. An emulator will not work with the DualSense. And so I think they kind of just have to make a factory for remastering games. But am I wrong? How many games are even left that haven't been remastered yet? 20? Like 4 Vita games, 16 PS3? I think my argument would be launch a $50 remaster that has ray tracing and looks better than a PS5 game every 3 months, and just have Nixus be in charge of it. I would have said Bluepoint as well, but now they're gone.
No, you've made a point that I have made a lot in the last 2-ish years, which is like, I'm not like, when you think about what the cost would be, I think you could just like contract out the remaining games.
Yes.
Because if you look at third parties like Capcom, Bandai Namco, like a lot of these guys already moved their games over, and they're continuing to move games over. Mm-hmm. Like, remasters still happen left and right all the time. So I don't want to say everything's over. We're still missing a ton. But like, as far as the exclusives go, like the PlayStation 3 exclusives, which I would argue are the highly desirable ones, I feel like PlayStation can just contract out the rest of them. Find a handful of studios, pay for them, get them moved over. We're getting MGS4 this year. That was a big one. And then boom, that tick it off. That's another one that
they don't need to do now. Yeah,
it's like to go through the whole process of making an emulation layer with a really good hit rate, making sure you have some CPU overhead, so you're not spending all this time dialing in each game. Mm-hmm. I think at that point it really just makes sense to port the remaining games.
Like, I wonder how much busy work they'd even need to do. Like you said, they could have a general purpose emulator and then just a system check of, do the buttons work, and then add trophies.
Yeah, well, like that's the thing. They've got source code. They know PlayStation 3 better than anybody. It's still a CPU hog, because that's what the PS3 was. So I think it's just a matter of like, it would take a long ass time. The overhead's not there for us to just like throw the games into this thing and they just work. They want to avoid the whole checking every game and then QAing it, recertifying it, because that's the politics of these games. Like Microsoft always gets brought up for their backwards compatibility program, but like, you see how they did it, which is it did take a long ass time.
A lot of work.
It started on Xbox One, and they reverse engineered like multiple individual games. They get recertified and QA'd again, mm-hmm. which is a whole process on a game by game. They monetize that program. I mean, I'll give them respect for like letting you like pull the download if you have the disc, like for free. That's definitely a very like goodwill consumer thing, but they still sell that game to you. Why do they sell it? Because they spend a lot of time making that program. So if you don't have the disc, they'll happily take another $20 from you to download it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think too, this could be a distinguishing feature of PS6 is like this, you get our new console because it has these exclusives. We're pivoting back to exclusives, but also because we're finally liberating the PS3 games with remasters, and they're just all here. So if you want to play them, you need a PS6. And I think that's going to be kind of one of those things along with like the handheld where it kind of feels like there's more of a delineation between the two gens. Like this is the one with PS3 games. This is the one with a handheld. This is the one that actually has AI and ray tracing. And like you can play some of these games on both, but like it's obvious that this is a new experience more so than PS5, which was a lot of people said felt like PS4 Pro. I would say it was more than that because go back, anyone who has a PS5 and play your freaking PS4, the quality of life is like comically better. But you know, that is why people said that.
No, you're right. I always tell people go back to that console generation you're comparing it to. I guarantee it's not what you remember.
Jihad Rouhani writes in and said, "Hi, we keep hearing from Asha that she's exploring different pricing models in storage and RAM configurations to keep the Helix price in check. I think our best assumption with today's market price is $1,200. Yeah, I don't know, though. It's not launching this year. I think we don't know what things will look like next year." And Asha said she expects memory prices to climb even more to 7x what it was a year ago. I don't know. I personally don't have a reason to doubt her. Her boss, Satya, is deep in the AI market, so they probably have an accurate idea of how much data centers will consume next year. See, this is where I disagree. Like, I live in Nashville, and they just signed an executive order banning any new data centers. So I don't think we do know how many data centers there will be next year. But he says, the point is Helix is going to be expensive. My question is, why is everyone blind to the fact that expensive kit doesn't sell? Series S outsold Series X by 3-1. Yes, but they also like didn't make the Series X the first year. I don't know if you remember that. Like the Series X was out of stock and the Series S was in stock. They were like over manufacturing the Series S.
I don't even think it is 3-1. Is it?
It is 3 to 4 to 1.
3-1.
So that's why whenever
I heard down the middle. I heard 50-50.
So at first it was 4-1, and I think now it's like at least 2-1. It probably 3-1. That's my understanding.
Yeah, like that. Well, that's the problem though, is they don't disclose. Microsoft doesn't disclose how many they've sold or like sales ratio.
Well, so this is the funny thing. Whenever people say they need a drop Series S support, they can't. there's way too many of them, guys.
Yeah.
But anyways, he's going on here. So I don't know. I'm just going to summarize here. Like, what do you think about the pricing of Helix, and what do you think it can get away with? Because I'm actually quite a contrarian on the pricing thing. I don't think it's going to be cheap. I think they've literally said it's going to be expensive. To me, that means over $900. I guess we'll see what that ends up meaning. But I do not think we should look at, I think there's this problem people keep happening where they're like, my prediction for next year is what's happening this year will happen next year. And that's just not what's happened any time. Like the PS5 launched during a pandemic and massive shortages. RAM prices, by the way, back then, I did a few videos about this, were up like 4 or 5x when the PS5 launched, yet they managed to make it $500. So I don't think we can assume RAM will be twice as expensive next year. I actually think it will probably be cheaper by the end of next year. But to say I know where pricing will be, people have been wrong every time. So I don't think we should assume either way. But like, let's say the Helix is, pretty good. It runs some version of Windows. I guess, should we also say it runs Steam? Because if it doesn't, I think that's a whole can of worms. Although I secretly think it might not, actually. But I actually, you know what? I'll just throw it to you. What do you think the Helix has to do, and what price do you think it can get away with?
And that's tough. No, you know what, Tom? We're in agreement. I feel like I'm one of the few people that kind of like holds people down a little bit and goes, okay, I don't think it's going to be that much. These guys have economies of scale. That's their business. They're in the business of selling consoles. You can't sell them that much. But like, yeah, what you're saying is, I think it's highly contingent on, can you put a third-party store on this thing?
Mm-hmm.
If you can put Steam on this thing, they have to make money on every box sold. They have to. They're going to cannibalize their own store where they don't take 30% on every game sold.
Mm-hmm.
So like Helix is a really fascinating thing to me, because I don't know, like it will conceivably be expensive, but that's also like, how many are they making? How much demand is reasonably there? Can you put a third party store on it? That's going to decide everything, I think.
Yeah, I suspect a hybrid thing is going to happen. So I think they'll want to make money on each console sold, but if I had to guess, instead of it being I don't know. Some of these PCs are making 30 per, well, NVIDIA graphics cards, I think they have like 100% profit margin on a lot of their stuff. Like they're not going to do that. But I think maybe they insist on like a 10% cut to 20% cut. But if they had if they got their stuff together and actually had good economics of scale, they got their supply chain in order. They're a big company. Even with just a 20% profit margin, I think they could undercut an equivalent PC by quite a lot. So I think there could be a hybrid approach where like you boot it up, it looks like a Series X interface kinda, it runs like one, and it's in Helix mode. And then I suspect they're going to try to have some partnership program with like Ubisoft Connect and EA Play, where they say to EA and Ubisoft, instead of taking a 30% cut on your games, what if you took, what if we gave up? Well, instead of us taking 30%, what if we took 15%, and in return, all of your storefronts are wrapped into the Windows Store on Helix, and they will be front and center when they boot up, and they'll go there. And Steam, of course, will not agree to that. And then what they'll do with Steam is, you can Alt-Tab into Windows mode and then load the clunky Steam thing and go, and it'll run. But everything in, like, I don't know if you've seen these presentations about like Xbox SDK, GDK. They're like big. They've been doing all these things with developers. If you make your game for Helix first and you work with us on the store, you're going to get this optimization and that optimization and this shader delivery feature and all of these things. And your game's actually going to run better on Helix. So just take a smaller cut, or we'll take a smaller cut than usual, so you can go on this basically Windows Store that will also be on PC. And in return, you're front and center, and your game runs best. And then they can still claim Steam is on their console, but it's like back in the corner and not as easy to use. Or maybe it's not on the console. I'm still not convinced. They will not say Steam is on the console. I keep like tweeting and telling people, if you're a journalist, ask Asha Sharma. Will it run Steam? And I think someone did recently, and she said, we haven't disclosed our partners at this time. That doesn't give me confidence that they're going to run Steam. So I think either it's some kid that's handcuffed to a radiator in the back room and technically it's there, or I think it's actually not there. And I've explained how I think they try to get away with having other storefronts that are de facto basically their storefront.
Right. So you're saying like the out of the box experience is an Xbox container of the user experience. And then there's this sort of, roundabout way of, you can close
go into
that
Windows mode, right? But it's not as easy.
Sure. Yeah. And make it a pain in the ass, like a PS3 thing, like other OSs there. But like a lot of people, you'd have to like actually grab like a Linux distro, properly install it. And, it's like more of a hassle, if anything, but it was technically there. So the thing is, because of Asha Sharma, and you've seen after only 100 days of her in that new position, making some pretty dramatic changes to things that were even in development for 5+ years. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
And if you remember that early pitch, that 1-minute video with Sarah Bond, former president of the company, saying, plainly that, I forget her exact language, without the bounds of other stores or something like that, that was like official language of, other stores are going to be on this thing. With Sharma at the helm now, I don't know. I would actually even humor the idea that they backtrack on that idea.
That's such a good point. I'm sorry, I haven't thought about that. Like, whether we like it or not, this is a Phil Spencer box. It is. Like, this was designed, planned, and conceived by Phil Spencer to be this hybrid console, or honestly just a gaming Windows PC. And now she's taking over. In the final year or two, she might just axe several features he wanted to be there. Just because it could be a Windows PC doesn't mean it does need to be a Windows PC. And she might decide that, like, you get the Microsoft Store, you can launch Word, you can launch all of our Windows apps, and you can pay us for them, by the way. But outside of that, that's the extent. And you can use, Edge Explorer or whatever it's called now. I don't even remember. So just download Chrome. But and this is a way to up Edge usage as well for their own numbers. Like, you can basically use this like a PC. You basically can. You can download PowerPoint, but it's a PC in an Xbox, and we're done. And she could just make that decision. And some of the stuff she's doing, like canceling ports of games to PlayStation, I think you're right. This would or could be one of those things where, even though they announced that they would have other storefronts, she's like, no, we're not going to.
Yeah. I think anything they do nowadays is so hard to even talk about because of how many very fast moving decisions they've been making as of late.
Dylan writes in. He says, "Hi, Tom and Ryan. Last time Tom had Colin from Sacred Symbols on, I was surprised to hear that Colin thought PlayStation has only a few generations left in favor of PC while praising Steam. I wonder, I haven't listened to the last Sacred Symbols. I wonder what he still thinks about the Steam machine at this point. Do you agree with this take? As PCs are more general devices, could you see consoles compete by pushing into more general computing tasks? PlayStation is Netflix, but maybe they could go further with a web browser and resource. They technically do if you fiddle with it. Resource constrained Linux VM that doesn't let you run Steam effectively, or a BSD. I actually have quite a lot of thoughts on this, but so I want to let you go first.
I think it's fair to say that if we're predicting generations here, like multiple, and like a generation can last 7 to 10 years on the long end, we're basically throwing shit at the wall.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair thing to say. So the thing that I'm going to throw at the wall is I think PlayStation is big enough to where they will find their path in this business. I do not know what that looks like. I think if anybody can make a console still work, it's probably them. Because the thing I always think about with consoles is that they are the ones that are making a purpose-built, economies of scale, low-cost device. The second consoles stop being that is when they stop making sense. So if you know, I would think in 20 to 30 years, there's still a market for local play and a box that is a no-brainer 2-wire thing for your television. But in 20 to 30 years, who the hell knows what that's going to really be?
Yeah, it might have jetpacks on it.
It might.
But yeah, so I think we're in agreement that I don't know if you read my notes below it that I put ahead of time, but like, I actually have a hot take that I think the future is less open. I think the future is more specific. And I think you're seeing that, right? Like if you look at like the trends of younger Gen Z, certainly Generation Alpha, you're seeing them often reject smartphones. You're seeing iPods make a comeback. You're seeing vinyl be popular. You're seeing people go, actually, I want my thing to do the thing, and then this thing to do the thing. And when we have these devices that do everything, it just becomes complicated and less fun to use. And I think actually the dumbest thing Sony could do is make the PlayStation more general purpose. Now, Xbox, they're a Windows company. There's a macro level play there. That's its own discussion. But for PlayStation, the entire reason they've kind of cemented themselves as the AAA gaming console platform is because they have doubled down on the PlayStation. They stripped out Zen 2 features in the place. I don't know if you saw the PS5 APU that they didn't need for doing certain kinds of math, that to just make the die a little smaller, a little less hot. And because of that, they had something that was cheaper to make than the Series X that offered the same or better performance. In doing that gen over gen and not letting it be something that you can mine Ethereum on, I guess not Ethereum anymore. I have no idea what they're mining now. Like that is why you could get a PlayStation. Yes, it was scalped, but the PlayStation was like $800 in 2021. It wasn't $1,500. Is because it wasn't a graphics card that could mine. And as long as Sony sticks with that, they will have the cheapest device just for gaming, and people will see it as a gaming thing. I think, I mean, you know, like you say, who knows what the future holds, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I just think the economics are such that it was $500, now it'll probably be $600 or $700. That games like a $1,200 PC, after that maybe it'll be an $800 box. That games like a $1,500 PC after inflation for the PS, 8 or whatever, or 7. Like, I just think if you keep doing that, it's gonna keep having that advantage because they built it to just game, and so it was cheaper to make than an equivalent gaming PC, because the equivalent gaming PC can do much more than game, but that's why it's so expensive.
Now, I think we're kind of I mean, I've been inclined to say, like, I think we'll still have consoles and controllers. You know, when you start saying 20 plus years, it seems a little bit uneven, but I don't know, like, just streaming a lot can happen in 20 years. Like, that's why I also was particular about saying local play. I would think in 20 years, there's still a demand for a affordable box that's a no-brainer device. as you say, it's very purpose built. It's meant to do this thing, and people appreciate having that no brainer box. I think it's going to be there. I think there's always going to be that option, and it's always been three players, right? Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, and we've seen one struggle. So that consolidation of the industry is already sort of funneling down to two key players. Not to completely discredit Microsoft, but you know that they're still there. So I don't know.
Yeah, let's see how well the next gen goes, right? But so this is another thing here too, and I think it was Broken Silicon 41. I want to say it was. I had John Petty from John Petty Research, who does a lot of this like market share analysis stuff, and if you'll remember back then, actually, this was from 2020. Yeah. So back, especially before them, there was this, this worry because what was it called? What was Google's streaming game service called? Stadia. Thank you. What a blast from the past. But like he was saying at the time, and I don't remember again if it was Broken Silicon 41 or one before that he was on, but like he was convinced that streaming was going to replace the local console within the next few years. Now here we are 6 years later, not at all. And a hot take I had was the economics are never going to make sense because of physics. And he's like, but it's going to be cheaper to stream. I'm like, are you aware of what they're doing with Stadia? They're like bragging about putting tens of thousands of GPUs in every city. You know what you could also do is sell 10,000 GPUs in every city. And then the argument, the internet keeps getting cheaper. Whatever's making the internet get cheaper makes the $500 box cheaper. So you're just putting something that's under a TV downtown New York for like the question mark, step 1, step 2, question mark, step 3 profit. Like whatever makes streaming work better until you find some quantum tunneling thing for it to be instant. Maybe that'll be a game changer. You're basically just moving where the box is. And when you move where the box is, there's a drop in quality, meaning the $500 box will still look as good. It's never going to change. Whatever you do to make the internet work better will make the box work better. And the economics of where we are now, I don't think will really change. And I mean, you're seeing GeForce now with NVIDIA do okay, but I still feel like this is like one of those arguments like that goes hand in hand with what me and you were just saying of like, but like when you say, what if this changes, that would also change in the favor of the console. And so if they stay their course, I don't see how the economic landscape really changes, you know?
Yeah. I don't see it. I remember that point too. It's like you're just moving where the GPUs are. Just sell them at that point. Yep.
Yeah. Like if you had one centralized location in Antarctica, and that's it. That's the only location. Maybe one other one for redundancy. And they were able to low latency send the signal everywhere. Maybe that would make things cheaper. But if you have to build a server in every state in the country, I don't know how you... Again, that's just called selling consoles. This piece of content is sponsored by Cash App, an app that I actually have on my phone. Specifically today, though, they want me to mention that if you've been curious about Bitcoin but haven't made the jump yet, Cash App makes it easy. You can set up automatic purchases with zero fees or buy larger amounts, also with zero fees. Start small or go bigger. It's designed to be simple either way. And furthermore, for a limited time, new customers can get $10 added to their balance. Just use code CASHAPP10 when you sign up. And don't forget this part, send at least $5 to a friend in the first 2 weeks. Terms apply. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Bitcoin services provided by Block Inc. brand. For additional information, see the Bitcoin disclosures at cash.app/legal/podcast. And by the way, someone that's understood Bitcoin since I started the channel, me, both from my personal experience and from interviewing experts throughout the years, I can say that just getting a tiny bit amount of Bitcoin is the best way to push yourself to finally learn about it. And Cash App is making that very easy for you to do. So use code CASHAPP10 and click the link below to download Cash App for free to support Moore's Law is Dead today. Jensen Wang writes in and said, is there even a point in trying Xbox exclusives? If exclusives are on Game Pass day and date, does it actually provide any useful data? So I'm not quite sure the exact angle of this question, but I do want to take this as an opportunity to ask you what you think about Xbox's strategy with exclusives, because it seems like they're kind of going back to, what would you say, the Xbox One model, not the 360 model, of like the games on the Windows Store, the games on the Xbox console, but we're not going to put it on PlayStation.
Yeah, I mean, this is like to be a fly on the wall kind of thing. I don't like. I would love to know what their thought process is. So like I'm a console traditionalist. Like I enjoy the fact that like yeah, like exclusivity, you know, builds the identity of the box and it sells the box. And so like that makes sense to me, but I think it's a really weird, awkward spot of you were shipping all your games to other platforms. Finally, you've more or less submitted yourself to this idea that we're a third party publisher that happens to have its own platform. We also have this subscription service that we made a big bet on and that didn't pay off. So I don't know what their game plan is. I really am struggling to understand what the game plan is outside of, I guess, Asha recently said this with, I think it was Fortune she was speaking with, which she just straight up said, our business is not healthy. When it is, we'll do more of them. And she's talking about exclusives. So that's them, I think. And this is Xbox's like good thing and bad thing. They talk too much. But because they're talking so much, that's them openly saying, we're not in a good spot. If we are better, we'll do more exclusives. So I don't know how they make it work, especially because their customers are just so conditioned to play the game through Game Pass.
I mean, I think they kind of have to stop doing the day and date thing. Unless it's like a smaller game. I mean, every now and then, right? Like Rocket League launched to PlayStation 5 on PS Plus to my memory. Like every now and then PlayStation gives you a new release for free. It's just like, it's never God of War because they'd be out of their mind to do that. And my suspicion is what you're going to see is a lot of studio closures, just trimming fat, unfortunately, what they would call fat, and studios that they don't think make the most money. And then they'll get down to like one or two big tentpole releases a year. If it's a single player game, it's only on Xbox. And then if, like you say, if things start to get better, then they probably take that data right. And that's where they make the decision. All right, so are we going to start pumping out more exclusives or not? And for now, I think it's probably just about trimming fat, doing exclusives for lip service, but probably not releasing as many of them as they used to.
Well, that's the other weird spot that they're in right now is that they have so many studios, and a lot of those studios were acquired on the basis of you have creative freedom. Don't worry about your game sales because your game's going into Game Pass. And they have like some sort of back end payment system. I forget what the hell they call it for the studios, but it's like some sort of system based on the engagement your game sees on Game Pass. So there is like a payment structure because obviously the games aren't going to sell if they're on Game Pass. But whatever the point, you know, the main point here is that they bought all those studios on the basis of you can make stuff for Game Pass. And that's, you know, now they're being penalized for that because apparently a lot of these studios are going to be closed or sold off. And they're I mean, in a way, they're transitioning to PlayStation's model of tentpole games, the biggest and the best releases. The difference is they still want to launch them on Game Pass, which I still don't know how you make that work. The biggest issue with Game Pass is simply that nobody has that kind of time.
Exactly.
It's not, you know, it's not
like you said, I'm not wanting for games to play. This isn't an issue for me. If I want to play a game, there's a game. There's 20 games on my Steam and my PlayStation catalog that I have not played yet, let alone if I ever picked up my girlfriend's Switch 2 and dived into a bunch of Nintendo. There's no worries. If I needed to play a game, I can do it. I just want to play the games that I think will be the most fun this year. Game Pass solves a problem I didn't have.
Yeah, I mean, at what, $22 something a month it is now, 23.
I think,
and that's down from 30. But like even at $23 a month, like that's just a big ask when games take so long to finish. So you have to be really time rich. It's not like music where you can pay your $10 a month and listen to hundreds of albums. It's not like a Netflix where you can watch tons of movies throughout the week. You know, you might, you know, depending on how much time you have, you might be able to knock out 2-3 games a month. The model doesn't work for like how people digest video games.
Yeah, I don't know how much you like went into the economics of Game Pass and Xbox after that huge leak came out a few years ago. But when that happened, I actually one of the contributors, Moore's Law's Dead Melodic Warrior, he read every document that leaked, and then he talked to me about it, and I parsed through it. And the conclusion I came to was the math suggested that what Phil Spencer would need for Game Pass to be successful is for it to align to become more successful than Netflix and Spotify. And that's like break even. And I'm like, what? You're betting on the next Spotify needs to happen for this to work? Are you out of your mind? There's no way, maybe, but like that's an interesting bet to make, that it has to be that successful for us to even survive. That's not easy to be the next Spotify. And I feel like Phil was acting like it would be easy. You see it in leaked emails. He seems so cocky.
Well, the primary issue is it's great if you can be the next Spotify, but it's all like these are premium, like sort of like very rich kind of gaming experiences, right? Like the idea, like to get to those numbers, Game Pass has to be something that's adopted outside of the Xbox console. And it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to play Death Stranding 2 on an iPhone. Like people don't play those kind of games on phones or tablets, and they certainly don't do it strictly through the TV without the console. They have the console. Mm-hmm. So their primary issue has always been that they've saturated on console. Game Pass will only ever grow with more Xboxes out there, and they're not selling those. You're not going to get people to subscribe to Game Pass without the console and play those, more premium style games stream through a phone or something. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it'd be fun to be a fly on the wall there and see what they're doing, because I think this is genuinely one of the most fascinating times to be covering the console and gaming hardware, because the economics are just, everyone said you have to put your game on every console and every platform to make money. Turns out that's not true. I didn't, but everyone said Game Pass is inevitable. It wasn't. Streaming games is inevitable. It wasn't. And they're all just kind of now fumbling around to see what the next business model actually will be, because it turns out they were all wrong about everything. So Jonathan Harris writes in and says, question for Ryan or Tom, maybe both. With Valve's current pricing for the Steam Deck, I don't think it really seems like a sub $700 Steam machine is going to happen unless they release it without a drive and RAM. With that said, and so close to next-gen consoles, would it just be more viable to build your own mini ITX PC instead of an upgrade path versus being locked down to a previous gen box? And actually, when we first recorded our response to this question, it was before Valve had revealed, everything, before the price was announced and before the reviews came out. So what we have done is had Gerard edit out our response to that, which I just basically said, I think it actually would have aged well. I basically said, if it's over 900, don't bother. If it's under 600, this seems like a good deal. But what we learned now is that the price is $1,000.49. It reminds me of when NVIDIA announced the Titan X Pascal, and they charged $1,200, and a lot of the taglines were, yep, not $11.99. They want the extra dollar. They couldn't even go for $9.99. They want that extra $50, which I'm sure makes such a difference to Gabe. But, I put down quite a bit of notes here, Ryan. So I'll just let you go first, because I don't want to poison the well at all. What do you think about this $10.49 price? And, there's full reviews out. So there's actually quite a lot here.
Yeah, the full embargo dropped today. So I didn't even get to really dive into everybody's separate takes on the machine just yet, just reading some initial headlines. But like pricing alone, right? I mean, I think it's quite indicative of Valve's current position. I think we had gotten into it during our initial answer, but it's like they can't subsidize, or rather they should not subsidize, which I think is a big sticking point for this thing in particular, right? I mean, if they try to get very aggressive with pricing at that point, or they're just going to cannibalize their own hardware, or not cannibalize necessarily, but you know what I mean? Like you're going to have businesses, enterprise buy these things in mass. They're not going to buy on Steam. So you have to make a profit on the box itself. $1,000 over, now we're getting into the territory where I'm not really sure this is going to make a whole lot of sense for a large swath of customers, prospective customers that were looking at this thing.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple things. I actually think the enterprise concern is a bit overblown. Like most of the deals, like when I worked at major companies like General Motors, everything we had was HP, if I remember correctly. And that's because they handled the support and the warranties and the software and security updates. Valve would never handle any of that. So no, I do not think any major company would buy these in bulk, because it's really about the relationships and the long-term support that you get from Dell or HP. Now, could smaller companies, like, sure, maybe like a startup in Brooklyn buys 10 of these for their programmers or something. But even then, I only think that argument works if this is way, way cheaper than this. Like even above $700-800, there's so many mini PCs, even with the RAM crisis we have right now, that you can get that will do any sort of work you'd really want to do for less than $1,049. I mean, I just finished watching much of the Gamers Nexus review of this, and they could build a PC that's stronger for less money. And I think I could actually, if I used Micro Center, do so for, I mean, I think you could build one a lot stronger for like under $750, like one with a 7500X 3D. I think, HP just had a sale on a gaming PC with a stronger GPU and CPU for like $700 flat. So for me, this tells me that either this thing is like they want Apple margins, or this is the most incompetent launch of a product I've seen in my life. Like, I mean, this is, I'm not going to mince words. Like, this is, I think Sony's breaking even at 650 with the PlayStation. Maybe, well, they're probably somewhat breaking even at 600. They probably make, I guess I don't know. They're around probably breaking even, I think, with the PlayStations. I guess I don't know for sure how much the disc would add and whatever. But like, if you think about that, then it's like, well, I don't expect them to be as good at this as Sony. Certainly not. But this is almost double the price. So they're not just worse at this. I mean, something I pointed out in a recent video is the only way I can see like where the Steam Deck got to with its price increase is if they're like buying the RAM off of eBay. And I think they basically said they are in interviews, that there will be no supply of this. Like they're effectively buying the RAM off Newegg or eBay or something. And when I say RAM, I mean the RAM chips. You can actually buy the RAM chips and solder them into things. Those are selling for like $20 per chip or something on eBay right now. I calculate that's the price increase they got. So they're no better at building a Steam machine than a guy in his shed. That's just crazy to me.
Well, so like, here's the thing, right? How much of it does it fall on this like idea of when we compare it to a more traditional console manufacturer, how much better they are at part procurement, and then economies of scale. When PlayStation is going to be expecting to ship millions and millions and millions of PS5, over its life cycle, right? I mean, that plays such a big role in the price per part. So, I mean, I almost have to wonder, I mean, were they fully expecting like, okay, we know we're going to be a very low volume here. How committed were they to getting as many of these things out there as possible? I mean, it's very analogous to the Steam Deck, I find. I think if you sort of listen to a lot of the enthusiast audience, you would think that the Steam Deck is, over 10 million plus lifetime. And it's like not. Mm-hmm. It's not even close. I mean, I don't want to say not close, but it's just, they're not working in the same numbers. So I'm wondering how much of it is economies of scale, part procurement, the relationships, the contracts they can get into place. How much of that really is sort of holding them back on making this thing, well, now it's at over $1,000. It's as you put it out there.
But exactly right. I feel like what I'm getting from you, and I can see it in myself a little bit too, is the conversation we want to have is around one that's like $800, and we're like, oh, is it worth this premium? It's only like $50 cheaper than this PC you could build yourself. Oh yeah, this is hundreds of dollars more than a PS5, but we get it, Valve. But the price is so high that I don't even think we can have that conversation. That's an $800 Steam machine conversation when we talk about like this is so high that I don't think there was any planning whatsoever, that they just kind of hoped RAM prices would be at their absolute historic low of all time. And again, it's interesting. They're not just betting that RAM will stay cheap. They were betting that RAM would stay at a record low price like we've never seen before in history. And they did nothing to stockpile stuff ahead of time. That's why the Steam Deck went out of stock as well. And it's just mind-boggling to me, because I can't think of how incompetent you have to be to announce a product before you've supplied the parts. Like Sony would never do that, because a competitor could just buy up the RAM and be like, oh, too bad. That's what OpenAI did with RAM to their competitors. That's what really started off this entire crisis, and I think on the pricing and the confidence side, I just think it is very clear there was absolutely no planning. And I also am starting to think like I really think that Gabe doesn't get how much of a PR blow this could turn into. Like, things can be disproportionate. And you're seeing comments now, ever since the Steam Deck went up in price, ever since he bought his mega yacht, now $70 million mansion in Florida. People are starting to turn on Valve. I mean, you go on Reddit and there's tons of posts like the summer sale sucks now. It sucks. It's not like it was when I was in college. Summer sale sucks now. The prices are no better than just getting a game. You know, Marathon, well, I guess it's a PlayStation game. I won't use that example. But like, a game goes on sale, it's the same price. It's on sale on PlayStation. There's nothing to the summer sale that's special anymore. They're the same price on Xbox and PlayStation usually when they go on sale. And I just think something's going on here where they're a bit asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, I see. I can't speak to how the wider gaming PC audience feels for Valve feels about Valve now.
Well, I'll tell you, it's pandemonium in the Moore's Law is Dead Discord right now, and I haven't seen one good review for this thing from anyone. You know, like even Gamers Nexus was talking about how they had to like. I mean, I guess I'll let Gerard play this now because I actually saved a clip. But what is in the clip is Steve is talking about how they had PC-like issues. Like they had to go into the menus and configure some Linux driver between things. It is not as easy to use as a PlayStation or Xbox or Switch 2. So the idea that you're paying PC prices to get a PC that games like a console, you're not. You can't upgrade the GPU. You can't upgrade the CPU. I don't know if you saw this. It only comes with one stick of RAM. So like the CPU's running single channel memory, which I'm sure you know makes it run slower. They couldn't even be bothered to use the proper RAM kit. Again, I think they're just buying these on Newegg or something. Like maybe worse. I don't know, because I think I could build something cheaper that's better.
Do you think this was a sort of scenario where it was more about establishing it and then over time, hoping that conditions get better, and then also based on any sort of orders that they're initially getting? I can't imagine they're like building a ton of these right off rip, right?
Yeah, Dave 2D in his video said that he expects incredibly low volume. So I want to say that too for anyone before they type, "Oh, it's sold out." Well, if they only have 10 for sale, of course it's sold out. I mean, I don't know how many they'll have, but he said it's going to be insanely hard to get, and they don't even know how many they'll make. Again, suggesting to me they're just buying RAM off Amazon or something if the volume's that low.
Yeah, like if they weren't already earmarking like, oh, we're looking to do 5 million this calendar year, like unless that was already part of the plan, which I think we're both suggesting was absolutely not, then that's the situation they found themselves in, is that they're buying memory at near market prices essentially and slapping this thing together. But just foundationally having the box ready to go and then hoping in 1 to 2 years it gets a little better. I'm not entirely sure.
That's what they did with the original Steam machines, and it completely face planted. And this is where, like, there's two ways you can argue this. Like, if it's going to be low volume, there's the argument of, well, then they should charge more because it's going to sell out anyways. Who cares? Clearly, that's what they've decided to do. But my argument is, Gabe, you have a $500 million or more, depending on some estimates, mega yacht. Was this ever going to make you money? Like, if you're building a foundation, shouldn't it make a splash? Shouldn't you get good reviews and then build from there? Because I don't think, like, if, like, let's say they only make 10,000 of these, like, okay, so you lose $200. So what is that then? Like $2 million? That's a drop in the bucket to Valve for what, if you actually believe this is the start of something bigger that you build on. You want good reviews. You want people to become evangelists that talk about them. You don't want it to be perceived as a fanboy badge that you're actually one of the suckers that bought this. And I think that's what it's going to be. And I think what this tells us is one of the main reasons I was excited about the Steam machine when they announced it, as I'm like, yeah, here we go. We're taking on Xbox. We're going to make sure, even if Xbox falls apart, there's some small check on PlayStation, even if it's only 5 million, 10 million units sold. It's something. It's something that can push back. And it's something that can maybe start gaining real gaming adoption to rein in Windows. And I think what we're seeing is actually Valve has no intention of this growing into anything. Because if they did, right, it's like the PS3, like they lost a bunch of money, but Sony knew they couldn't lose momentum, so they had to sell it at a bad loss. And ultimately they paid for it, but then they won the generation and every generation after that. And what we're seeing here is Valve blinked, I think. They had a chance. This was their chance. Xbox has never been weaker. As we discussed on the show, the Series S is the highest volume version of the Steam of Xbox Series. So from that perspective, when I think about like Xbox trying to get people to move to Xbox PCs with Helix. I think they're making a miscalculation and forgetting that most of their fans have a Series S. Like, I thought the Steam Machine could be the Series S path to PC gaming, where the Xbox Series S people all buy this affordable, stronger, fun device because they feel alienated by Xbox. I think Valve had a chance and they blinked. That's what I'm seeing here, is a complete blinking. There was no, D-Day from Saving Private Ryan moment where like, the RAM crisis happens and like the ears ringing and some guy sergeant stands up and says, get over there. There was none of that. There was no standing up. They just let their ears ring and they put their head in the sand. No one stood up and took charge over this issue. I think they just sleepwalked forward and just hoped things would get better. And they didn't. And I just think this is a massive missed opportunity. I know there'll be people that will say it's not over. I'm like, that's the argument you make if it was $700 or $800. Like this is they might as well have just waved a white flag, I think, for the future of their console market. And this further makes me really worried about Steam Deck 2. I mean, if this is how they handle this, it was luck. They didn't learn anything from making their first console.
Well, that was the language around Steam Deck 2, is that we wouldn't do it unless there was some sort of meaningful jump in hardware that we can reasonably price it at. And now we know that's going to be like, 10-fold times harder based on that previous language. But I don't know. It always, like, the Steam machines stuck out to me as this sort of entry point in a few categories: the living room and younger audiences. Like younger audiences in particular, like PC's growing, still doing really well. A lot of people are, actively, a lot of young folks, mind you, are actively saying no to consoles. They want to go right into PC. PC's the cool place to be. Get on Discord.
This was such an opportunity to capitalize on that.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like at $1,000-something, that's no outside that reach. Yeah, undeniably. But here's the other issue too. If we assume that was the game plan, you would want it to have a retail presence. Didn't they say, am I misremembering this? Was that not something they mentioned before, that they would explore a retail presence? Or I think that sounds like maybe a line they dropped, but I don't believe there is one. I mean, maybe people can tell us if we're wrong, but I don't think. Yeah. And I just got emailed actually from one of my sources who, surprised, my sources also like gaming stuff. So this person isn't telling me any information, just kind of like a friend chiming in and going, the ordering process is a complete mess. So also the ordering process doesn't seem to be going very well either. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at that kind of, well, let me ask you this. What do you think for what they are selling it at? Because if we still assume they want to make money on every box sold, how good is that? You said Apple margins. You think it's that high? What I've said for like the past month, really since I saw the Steam Deck price go up, like I did some napkin math and I'm like, the increase in price for the Steam Deck OLED is literally, if they're buying RAM at $20, like a gigabyte or something insane, if I remember correctly, like they're literally like, and even it was like, even if you increased it like that much, it still seems like there would be margin left there. So I've been suspecting that they took the Steam Deck OLED's price increase. There's only two options here. Either one is, yes, prices went up, but it's not like the Switch 2. I think Nintendo may have eaten a little bit of the cost when they went from $450 to $500. That means their head is still in the game. I don't think anyone really shook their heads at $450 to $500 for the Switch 2. It seems like they are just passing along the cost increase. They're not taking advantage of it. I believe Valve with the Steam Deck OLED at like, $949. They love that 49. That was them also adding more margin. And it's either that's true or they're incompetent, because I can buy the RAM difference in price myself for less. Myself. At a shopping cart at a Micro Center, or for the Europeans who get mad when I say Micro Center is magic and we shouldn't use it as an example, like whatever. Also on Newegg, I could get it for the same price. So that's just where I'm at. Like there's no way around this. Like either they have good margins on this or they're that incompetent, because I don't know. Again, if it was $800, we could debate if, they're just not as good as this as Sony or Apple or something. But $1,049. That's, guys, this has a low end 6 nanometer cut down laptop GPU from like 2023. This has a tablet CPU with only 2 big cores and 4 little cores.
this is using components that you can buy better stuff for like $150 each. This is really cheap stuff. So I guess I have to think they have Apple margins, or at least, Radeon graphics margins, which is like 40-50% usually. If I can build something stronger for $750, how else can I explain this? Like I find it so hard to believe that if I can do this for $750, like add the controller even, and let's say the box is made out of gold. It's like some fanboys are acting like that justifies the price. That still only gets you to like $850 maybe. And then you just throw 30% margins on it. So when they say they're not going to subsidize it, I think they're making a big fat profit to pay for the next yacht. That's what I think. Or they're incompetent because I can build one for less. Like how else do you explain it? If I can build it for substantially less and it's stronger, how could this not have big margins? I even think that goes beyond incompetence. I don't think that they could be that incompetent.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, what's the premium on like, it's all in this cute little cube?
I can build a small PC. I have a small PC right here. I can build a small PC.
But like, that's the thing, right? If we assume that they want to break in and get younger people to buy this thing, or you want to sell to somebody that just doesn't want to, not to say it's a really tough thing. Obviously, there's so many like modern day tutorials of how simple and easy it is to put together your own PC. But if they really want to break down that barrier of, this is just a set it and forget it console-esque experience, as in you buy this little cube and you plug a handful of cables in and all of it's going to work, it seems like the premium for that is substantially more than what we were initially thinking. Your point, 800 would have been that neighborhood of like, 1,000 plus is a lot more.
1,049. They couldn't even make it $999.
1,000. Well, no controller too.
Oh, there's no controller with it?
Well, it was 1,049, no controller, right? And then if you want the controller, it's 11 something. I don't have.
I didn't even catch that yet. So again, these arguments. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. There's like four configurations, right? No controller, and then 2 terabyte controller.
Yeah. See, so the base model, isn't that half? Yeah. So no control. I'm looking now. Yep, no controller and half a gig of storage.
Oh, that's worse for you.
What do you want me to say? This is just either yes, I think they have Apple margins. I think Gabe wants another yacht. I do. I just can't, because all of these arguments like no, it doesn't come with a controller. I can build the same PC and then buy the controller separately, be cheaper. Like there's no argument here. I think Valve's making a big old fat profit on this. And, talk is cheap. We want to challenge this. We want to take an opportunity to do whatever. It isn't, like this isn't, like you said, appealing to young people. This didn't capitalize on an opportunity. This is them completely blinking.
If that's the case, that if there is no concern that that enterprise wouldn't buy them, subsidize. I mean, don't they subsidize the deck, or at least they did previously? Like right when it launched,
they never said. They said it was painful, and they paid lip service to like. So I don't know what they did, but my suspicion is they had like a 10% profit. I don't think they were taking a loss. But remember, really? Like Nvidia makes like a 60% profit or more. AMD makes 20 to 50% profit margins. I can't even tell you what gaming CPUs. Some of those are probably like 80% markups for AMD. Some of them, So I think taking a 10% profit, I think is actually, that's more than most people would do. But this isn't 10% here, I don't think.
No, I wouldn't think either. It's just, if there is no genuine concern of, we'll lose a little bit of money on this thing because we know when somebody picks up this thing, they're going to be buying from our storefront, then, why not? I mean, the weird thing about all this is that there's a 30 plus, more than that, years history established with console manufacturers. Mm-hmm. They are willing to lose the money because you're establishing a platform, a big install base, and then there's an attach ratio for each console. PlayStation's got, I think most of their systems have a 10 game attach ratio. You just break it down as simple math of you're going to sell X, Y, and Z number of games per box out there. You can also attribute maybe an extra controller. This gets into more of the minutia of the console stuff with like, subscriptions, for example. But there's all these extra factors you can tack on, knowing that you might sell a box either at like breaking even or even just taking a loss. So I just, if they were that committed to actually getting these things out there, I don't see why they wouldn't do it, especially for a storefront that has had so much goodwill built up over its history.
Exactly. It's so hard to win that back. And yeah, I mean, people would argue, oh, you could install Windows. Oh, no one's buying this and installing Windows, dude. Like 1% will. I think that they could have relied to a degree on a console like economic system where, yeah, they know that this will help with attach rates and that's what it's really like. And people will buy this on Steam instead of downloading another storefront. I don't think there'd be very many people that install Windows and bother to use it unless it was $400. But again, it was never going to probably be that cheap once we saw what was going on with the Steam Deck. So yeah, I just here, let me go through a few things here. I have some notes that I took and I've got my final big spiel here. So I wanted to like just highlight some things that I noticed in reviews. So Gamers Nexus, from their review, they had a pretty useful chart actually, where they like showed dozens of GPUs they benchmarked, and they showed the plus and minus percentage of what's stronger than the Steam machine in their testing and what's weaker. And what they found is that this thing was benchmarking roughly around an RX 6600. Now that should stand out to people because the GPU in the Steam machine is based on a die that succeeded the 6600 with a better architecture. And the PS5 is around a 6700. So this is firmly weaker than a PS5. This is actually benchmarking worse than I thought it would. And, the PS5 in more modern terms is between a 6600, 7600, 7600 XT, something around there. And if you look, like I have a Kingdom Come Deliverance benchmark, you can see right there, the Steam machine is like, let me see here. It's like struggling to get to even 50 frames per second. The performance of around a 7600 XT, which I think is around a PS5, is right around 60. And I looked it up. Digital Foundry's own benchmarks show the PS5 doing 1080p 60 and performance mode. So this totally backs up that this thing is like I thought it would be, about 20% weaker than the PS5. But then you get to the CPU. The CPU is losing to a 6-core Zen 2 in some benchmarks. It's throttling to 4 gigahertz. I need to keep reminding people it is not a 6-core Zen 4. It is 2 Zen 4, 4 Zen 4C. And some of the best benchmarks I saw was benchmarking around an 8-core Zen 2. So it is not, I saw those people saying it's double the CPU performance of a PS5. In real world games, it won't be. It's about the same. And then it runs 1080p by default. So games boot up in 1080p, and a rep said to Tom's Hardware that we believe this is really running best with a 1080p or something, and this is a 1080p 60. They told us this would be a 4K 60 device, and now on review day, they're saying it's going to run 1080p 60 by default. So they lied about that as well. And I don't think FSR 4 is going to save it. It's cool. AMD confirmed that this is getting that today and that's coming to APUs like I said it would, but I don't think this is going to be enough to make up for the performance deficit it has with the PlayStation 5. And so, I mean, it's, we talked about how expensive it was and like, ooh, how could this happen? But I want to be very clear that we don't skip over. This thing is benchmarking at least 20% worse than a PS5. Gamers Nexus showed that it has tons of PC-like issues. You have to configure drivers and mess with stuff to get games working. So it's not as easy to use as a console. And its CPU seems to be a 6-core Zen 2 in performance because it throttles so much. And it's a premium box that makes everything throttle. How premium? So my conclusion is that this is Valve's PS3 moment. Gabe just bought a $500 million yacht, a $70 million mansion. And before people say it's because of component issues, it was the same story with the PS3. They tried to make their own GPU. They failed. They had to buy an NVIDIA one last minute. And it's the same thing. It's just they were incompetent preparing the PS3. They did not plan correctly. And they had a lot of hubris. And it's the same thing going down. I think maybe it's gone to Gabe's head that people have shunned the Epic Game Store and will even buy games on Steam instead of get them for free on Epic. And I think he's forgotten that fundamentally the reason we use Steam was because it was cheaper. It's because of the summer sale, which now everyone on Reddit says sucks. And he thinks that they're a premium brand that can get away with anything, just like Sony did with the PS3. And I'm not saying like Valve is doomed or that this is like the start of the end. But if they go through a rough patch like PlayStation did, which they survived, PlayStation more than survived their rough patch, this will be the marker. This will be their PS3 moment. Pride always comes before the fall. And it's right before Helix is about to revamp the Windows Store and try to go for Valve's throat. It's right before Helix launches. And I can't think of a dumber time to do this. But again, same with the PS3. Right when they're going to get heavy competition from Xbox, they just completely bumble preparing for the next gen, come out late like Steam Machine, too expensive like Steam Machine, and think that they can get away with anything. And I don't think they can. I think you look at the comments, I've never seen more negative Valve comments. They used to make him the Pope. As Pope Gabe Newell, you'd see these. I don't see those anymore. I see comments where they're like, Gabe sucks. And man, this image you had, it's hard to get it back. I still don't think Sony got it back from their PS2 days. It's really, really hard to get that back. But that's my little spiel about my overall conclusion.
A lot of it's well said. I would think this is a possible PR win for Helix.
I 100% agree. And the thumbnail I made for my Helix analysis was Steam Killer. I just and what that came from was nothing to do with the performance. Well, not nothing, but not really about the performance, which of course is going to be, I don't know, 5-10 times better than the Steam Machine. That's not hyperbolic, people. It might be like 5 times faster or something or more. It's that when I dug into their like GDK and their developer outreach presentations, and then I reached out to developers and asked, can this really work? All of them were saying like that they were surprised and like, wow, they've really got an easy to develop for system here where they have like a pipeline to make a game for Windows or a game for Helix. And then there's like a small porting step to make it run on all Windows PCs and then a small porting step to make it run on Series X. And they're like, I don't know if I want to do this, but this is, and of course, this is when they thought the Steam Machine would be great. They're like, this might actually convince some devs to develop for Helix and then Windows first without considering Steam. And that's why I said it might be a Steam killer. It's because I think actually under Asha, Xbox is taking seriously that they need to make the Windows Store good again. And if they do that with like a $1,000 Helix or something, I don't know. That's who's buying. I mean, come on. Like they could have the ultimate hybrid Windows or gaming PC and actually deliver on what people wanted, which was unbeatable price performance and a console form factor. And again, Valve could have been like the PS2, launching a year early with something weaker that does everything people want. Complete missed opportunity.
I mean, that all makes sense, but it's also like dedicated fan bases or just people that are so entrenched in an ecosystem. So I'm still in the here and now inclined to think that a lot of Helix buyers are simply going to be Xbox buyers. Mm-hmm. How many people are you really going to court away from a different storefront like Valve? Like Steam.
If it can technically run Steam and it's a good price, I think a lot.
Yeah. But here's the thing. If we were also humoring the idea that maybe, a new CEO like Asha Sharma actually kind of backpedals on this third-party store idea and they make it a huge pain in the ass for you to do that, it's tough to say because in theory to humor the idea of people walking away from their Steam libraries for the Windows Store is pretty hard, a hard pill to swallow. This is, because the other thing too, it's like Valve can, in my view, they can fumble hardware because that's whatever. People are still going to log into their current PCs that they built or build a new PC and just use the storefront as is. They're still a massive privately owned store operator too. They're not public. They're not beholden to anybody. That's the other thing that Valve has this attitude about. They can kind of experiment, R&D, do whatever the hell they want. They don't have shareholders that they're beholden to. They can do hardware, experiment. Oh, no, it didn't work out. Okay, well, we're still the number one PC storefront, and that's not changing anytime soon.
And I said I don't think they're doomed, right? And my comparison to PS3, let's remember that's the company that now dominates all of gaming. So it's not like I'm saying they're going to go out of business. If you could actually read that to be quite the opposite. But at the same time, I have to say that this couldn't have been handled worse. And I think it's a lot of times, like you see this a lot, like in politics, like a political decision someone makes and you're like, oh, this is so stupid, but it's just this mistake. And I will go, no, actually, if they handled this dumbly, now I'm concerned about every decision they're about to make in the future. and that's what I see here. And it was the opposite with the Steam Deck with, wow, what a success with the Steam Deck and Steam OS. And And so this tells me like, okay, so maybe that was just a one-off in making tons of good decisions, and now we can't be so sure that their future decisions will be handled well. And like, look, yeah, they're a private company, but it all depends on Steam. If Microsoft makes the Windows Store good and they take even 20%, which they would love to have, I'm sure at Microsoft, even that much, 20% of Valve's storefront market share, that's a 5 a.m. alarm fire right there. Like that's they will freak out. So, I mean, there's a reason you have shareholders, because sometimes they stop you from doing really stupid shit. But we'll see. I guess I don't know. I'm not saying Valve's doomed. I am saying though, if they go through a rough time, I think this is what everyone will point to as the canary in the coal mine. And it could have been so good. You're here. The anger you hear from me is just, I was so excited, and I really was like, it doesn't need to sell 10 million. It could sell 5 million. But if it scared Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo a little bit, that is what reins them in. You don't need to beat them. You just need to be a check on them. And this is not a check. If anything, this is going to make your Helix and PlayStation 6 more expensive. Like, they're going to look at this. It's going to be like when Intel launched graphics cards and it just made Radeon look good. Like, this isn't helping anything.
Well, that's the thing. I would have been very happy to see this thing be as priced as low as it possibly could be, for the sheer interest of the wider community of people that are trying to buy and play games in today's very expensive economy.
Yes.
There's this crazy K-shaped economy. I would much rather most of these companies not leaning on the upper end of that K, where affluent buyers are still going to be buying a PlayStation 6, Helix, and even this thing.
Well, Gabe needs his yacht though.
Yeah, I would have loved to see it. Like, if they could have made serious movement, like in the living room, for example, I'd love to see PlayStation get spooked by that. But I think we both are in agreement that at this price tag, that is simply not going to happen.
Nope. And, I really don't know what else there is to say. So I think we'll leave it there. And then, the podcast is not over. We have a few more subjects we get to. And so now you will see us warp back into the past and continue that the next conversations there. It started with Pong, and Samson Eagleman writes in, so I combined their questions. I see that there's an Unreal Engine patch for Steam to allow Unreal Engine games to be played on VR. This is a big deal for the Ace Combat games and like playing the VR version of Oblivion, well, lots of other games. What's the chance Sony can come out with a $10 or $20 add-on for games to make them VR compatible? Also, will PS6 support PSVR 2? Can we hope for anything VR first party? I have a PlayStation VR and VR 2, but Sony seems to be pushing me to Steam soon. So I wonder what your perception is, but I thought the PSVR 1 was a surprisingly good product for the price, that actually for, I think, a couple of years was the most popular VR gaming device for AAA. Then they just, PSVR 2, I think, was kind of a miss. I think PS6 will probably support PSVR 2, but my opinion is they're not going to do anything but the minimum for VR support moving forward. Do you agree?
Yeah, VR is not in a healthy spot right now. So I'm inclined to say they will unfortunately not do much as far as like big VR stuff on PlayStation 6. I think minimum wise, like it's USB-C. I would think it's backwards compatible. Like you can plug a PSVR 2 in and still play your.
It'd be silly if it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think that much is I don't want to say locked in, but you know what I mean? I was talking to Miles from Flat to VR, who works at that company, and that's what their company does, is convert flat screen games to VR. And he was making a point of like, that the headset can still show gorgeous looking things. The bottleneck is actually the hardware. So in theory, you don't necessarily, unless you want to do like a huge lens upgrade or something, or, tracking upgrades, you can still do like new games on a PlayStation 6, and they can be title ID'd as PS6 native games and see like better graphics on just the current headset that we have. So I think like third party, there's still a distinct possibility that you can see new VR stuff and even better VR stuff. But PlayStation specifically supporting or doing a new headset, that is where I would say no. I think it's a really tough thing to justify from their point of view right now.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been talking here like, ooh, maybe they'll go for 4K 120. Like, I don't remember what the headset does, but it's something like between 1440p and 4K 120. So from that perspective, like just having it run completely native and sharp, I think that's enough. Like even, yeah, who knows? Maybe it could be a small boon for the PS6 where you've got this old VR device that people can buy for like $250 and it runs all games really well now. I think that's most likely what you're going to see. And, you know, I honestly, I'd almost be surprised if this happens, but I think at most what you'll see is some lip service paid for like 1 minute in the reveal where they're like, also it's backwards compatible. Most games will run better. One indie dev's making a game for it, so don't worry. Like, but I think that's most of what we're gonna see. I just can't see them coming out and being like PSVR 3. Not for the foreseeable future.
Well, you certainly wouldn't see like a $20 add-on for games to make them VR. Now that wouldn't happen, because that's one, that this is like a console manufacturer. Like they're super careful about how like the experience of games. You can't sort of retroactively like on a wide, like a retroactive scale, like that just wouldn't happen. It'd have to be an official patch, and you go through the whole thing, you know.
Yeah. Kenny Powers writes in, question for Ryan, do you think Sony has the willpower or determination to fix the social engineering account theft problem by the time next gen starts? I saw this from Col Moriarty. His account was stolen. They got it back. Have they not fixed it, to your knowledge?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Well, because there's nothing, like, not to say there's nothing to fix, but it's like, that's how their customer support channel works. Like that's, unless there was like an overnight policy change, and mind you, they contract this work out. So I think it's in Indonesia or something. So it's obviously so
if someone doesn't like you who works there, they might be able to just find a way to screw with you. And it's hard to think of like some like trustless key system like AWS has, or some cryptocurrencies to like you manage the keys and they can't access it. There's almost no way to do that.
So your security is only as good as the weakest chat support agent, because this is social engineering. Like that's it's so when people contact support and pretend to be you, if they have enough information, the chat agent, every chat agent has to like follow a policy, a very strict policy of here's all the X, Y, and Z things we need from you to turn off your two-factor. Unless the company makes a policy change of, if you enabled passkey, we will not disable it. Like you have to like either get it back or, so it's, all I can say about this issue is, from what I know, is that the people at PlayStation that were, I think, let's say very high ranking at the company, and you would think, oh, they must know about this, and they didn't. They know now. After the Colin thing, they are aware of it. So I would sincerely hope that we see a change in the short-term future.
All right. Final question. Curry King 3 writes in yet again. What excites you most about next generation hardware or console games in 2027 in the near future?
What excites, just in general, huh?
Yeah, like what excites you about next gen and upcoming games?
It's tough to say. I think it's a mix of all of that stuff that we've been going over so far. Show me a cool controller. Show me a really neat UI that makes me want to launch my games on that instead of PS5. Lower load times even more. You know, like it's still a few seconds. Get me to that screen, even the menu even faster. And above all else, I mean, I as far as visuals are concerned, like I would like to see enough games have a mix of ray tracing and not take a huge hit to frame time.
Right.
Some games look really beautiful with ray tracing on. And this generation for sure, it's really been a sort of you either get it or you don't kind of thing. PS5 Pros sort of alleviated that to a degree.
Yeah.
But even then, like, you know, PSSR, well, we didn't even really touch on PSSR. 2 is much better at this point. But yeah, I'd like to see a PSSR 3. And I'd like to see a sort of no drawback performance mode where I get full ray tracing, maybe some path tracing stuff. Just give me beautiful games with a nice controller, fast load times. Just do a better PlayStation 5.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people like miss, because, you know, there's all this consternation and debate about like the leaks I put out about PS6 performance, and they're just like, what? In raster, it's only like 2 to 3 times faster, and they always ignore the part where I'm like, well, it might be 6 to 12 times better at ray tracing, guys. That's kind of insane actually. And then I have to like try to explain like actually the PS4's CPU is weaker than the PS3's. It's not always that everything goes up 10x. But I think people miss like how close we already are to not really wanting more performance. That if you get to something that's like, 50% to double the PS5 Pro's base performance and then 5x its ray tracing, like you're saying, that is where every game is just kind of 4K 120-ish within reason. Yes, there'll be dynamic res. Some people will be like, it's not native, I'm not playing it. Whatever, dude. But like they'll kind of get there. And then what really makes me excited, though, about next gen is the death of PS4. I will be cheering the death of PS4 and just giving the finger to the people when the PS5 came out that were like, this is anti-consumer. God of War, they all better be on PS4. It's like you got your wish. A lot of games were still on PS4. And then a lot of these same people are like, why didn't we see more games use the PS5? Because it's all on PS4 still. And even for PC gamers, I want the death of the Xbox One and the PS4 to be completely cemented, because even if you have a situation where like, I don't know whatever it ends up being, the PS6 is 10 times the performance and ray tracing as the PS5. And so you're like, well, what is that? Can they even put it on PS5? I don't know, maybe, but like at least if it's on PS5 and PS6, they both have really fast SSDs. Like also, that's another thing that I think held back the PS5 is from the ground up, knowing that even now with like Resident Evil 9 that I believe is not on PS4, it is on PC. There are people that will try to play it with a hard drive. Once we're finally like, and I always find it funny when I play Resident Evil 9 on the PlayStation, by the way, because the loading screen is like half a second. You can never read. I don't know why they even bothered to put a loading screen, but it must be because it's on PC as well. And you might have a slow SSD there or hard drive. Once we make it so for sure, there's no hard drives. For sure. You support ray tracing from the ground up, so we don't even need to do raster for things that don't make sense anymore. I think people are going to be surprised how notable the games that come out. Some games will be cross-gen, but like 28, 29, I think it'll be much more like PS4 or PS3, where it's like, oh, this is clearly a better gen, because you are finally, shedding the yoke of all of this crap that frankly is still, the first Call of Duty to not be on PS4 is coming out this year. It's 6 years after. I can't imagine how much that's holding back some development and progression of like graphics.
Well, so it's funny because Call of Duty is like, if you check, that was like the last big IP that was still shipping on PS4. So that was certainly an outlier, no doubt about that. But yeah, it's definitely the drives for sure. That was the big PS5 pitch initially, is this unleashed game design of based on asset streaming. Like it's basically a secondary pool of RAM because you can just dump so much really, really fast based on player sight lines. And it's like, you can't actually make games like that if it's still shipping on PlayStation 4. And then PS4, you pretty much within the last year, definitely stopped getting most games. But that's still an issue because the games ship on PC. So when you have that like true bare minimum, even SATA SSDs, if we can like put those behind and strictly, do NVMe and direct storage stuff from that point on, I think we'll be in a pretty good spot for games that can be designed in such a manner where they can dump a lot of stuff very fast based on sight lines and not do those windy corridors or long elevator rides.
Yeah, a joke I often have is like the PS5's SSD, I think is 5.5 gigabytes per second. Then they say, with the IO controllers and Oodle, it's anywhere from 9 to 20 gigabytes per second. But at a minimum, if you really think about it, if you do the math, 5.5, there's only 16 gigabytes of RAM in the console. So whenever I see a game take more than 3 seconds to load, I'm like, which a lot of them don't. Demon's Souls has no load screens. Resident Evil 9 is pretty much instant. A lot of games are. Whenever I see a game take 10 seconds to load, I'm like, 5.5 gigabytes a second, 16 gigabytes. Theoretically, how is this even taking longer than 3 seconds? And it must be because the engine's just old, because a lot of games don't need that. Yeah, it's going to be fun too, because like, imagine if the baseline is the PS5 SSD, that's still faster than most desktops. Like the difference between that as the baseline to a 1,000 times slower hard drive or even 100 times slower SATA drive. I think people underestimate how big of a difference that that would be if we could even make that the minimum, and maybe it's just a little slow on PC and that glitches a little bit if you don't have that, but we'll be getting to a point where like last gen SSDs are still so much faster than what the baseline was that I think will fundamentally change things.
I would agree.
All right. Well, I think we can end it there then. Ryan, please tell everybody where they can find you and really just plug anything you want.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. So thank you so much. It was great to finally talk to you. I'm over on YouTube at MysticRyan on YouTube, or just Mystic. If you type me in, I'll probably show up for PlayStation stuff, but cover PlayStation news every Friday. That's my new show, Let's Talk PlayStation. And then every Tuesday can be either an interview topic, some sort of opinion piece on the games business, and other features. Sometimes we'll do like PS3 online videos, look at like old games that are still working. And we're always doing a lot of different topics, but it's, primarily within the games business and covering the world of PlayStation.
Mm-hmm. And of course, as always, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell button, hype it if you have a phone, because that's a thing now. Share the video, and remember to join Moore's Law on Patreon to ask guests like Ryan questions and get access to die shrinks and all of that other bonus content as well. Once again, Ryan, thank you for coming on. Everybody, please have a great rest of your week. This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarked by me, the creator, Tom. However, Moore's Law is Dead is much more than just one man. It is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance also provided by Carbon Cry and Kerry No Sugata. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com. On the About Support page, in the event you want to hire me for consulting work, or hire Gerard for audio work, Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or interested in working with Carbon Cry or Kerry No Sugata as well, you can find all of our information there. You can also find our long-term sponsors there and show them some love for helping make this work possible. Additionally, if you are a fan and would like to mail Moore's Law is Dead some love in a letter or with hardware donations, please mail parcels to Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee 37206. And speaking of fans, patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content possible. Every month, and every day actually, depending on the person, me, Gerard, Dan, Jean-Philippe, and more are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of entertaining content and investigative journalism that aims to be as independent as possible from outside influence. Only direct funding from fans can make this possible in the modern era. And so if you have any extra money every month, even just $1 or $2, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. All members of the Moore's Law is Dead Patreon, even down to the $1.28 128-bit tier, get access to a catalog of dozens of essential die shrink episodes and the ability to ask guest questions ahead of Broken Silicon recordings. Additionally, higher tiers get access to the entire catalog of hundreds of episodes of die shrinks, and these include exclusive interviews with game devs and other guests, behind the scenes looks at Moore's Law is Dead leaks, and more niche coverage of subjects that really only the biggest gaming dorks like me and you would care about. They would not profit on YouTube, but they don't have to profit on Patreon. And so if you're interested in that, you can get access to all of that stuff and even more at higher tiers, like ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask free questions in Loose Ends live streams ahead of recordings, thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts, and access to the Discord with thousands of fans there who would love to discuss gaming hardware with you. I am one of them. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us, please just share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family and on social media and Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app. All of that stuff does help a ton as well. But as I said, this podcast would not be possible without its patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now is the time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 1024-bit HBM3 or higher supporter levels: Brad Medlin, Z Jits, Daniel D, Nicholas Buckner, Deke, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Jem Ferrier, Valcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Sarcastro, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Hal Booma, Shredbird, Sammy Molas, Chris Anthenos, Jonathan, Tommy, Jake223, Jake Martin, Amiable Chief, Matthew Cassell, Zlicky, Winwang, I Should, Gamers Unite, Ian Clifford, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Travis Gooding, Dan M1988, Suit Taylor, Mads, Greg, Michael McGee, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Teak Autumn, The Forbidden Juice, Little Germany, Windstar, James I. Raider, Shay, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Stephen Dick, Mac Daffy, John Swin, Justin Bustle, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Wright, Brian Scanlon, Hardland, Slushbot, Jensen Angima, RB Racer, Bing Bong 3, Solarized 80, Keekum, Sprutnik, Brian P, Cornster 671, Penta Winta, Smash Axley, Omega Doge Huger, Ender Kiwi, Dominic Passeri, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, AI Soldier 789, Carrie Mal Masri, Wahil, Chi Bulls, Manolis, Ragkusis, Kevin Kuntz, Jonathan Harris, Bespoke EP, Kainouche, Zyber Ahmed, Johnny Trans, Fred Berger, Hunter Tempeh, RKO, RK0, Henry Day, Dudester, John Tiberius, Roadkill Dog, OMG Clover, Rebellious Pilot, Serve, Chilled, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.